Chapter 1579. Brother, I want to eat meat. Put that plate of meat in front of me. A little girl who looked like she was only 3 or 4 years old said to Goofan in a childish voice. Goofan patted the little girl's head lovingly, then brought the plate of braised pork that was enough for 4 or 5 adults to the little girl. However, in less than 5 minutes, this big plate of braised pork was completely devoured by the little girl. While wiping her oily mouth with her sleeve, she continued to say to Goofan, "Brother, I want more. I'm not full yet. Your mother said that you can only eat 1 plate of meat for a meal, absolutely not more, or else you will grow fat." Hearing the little girl's request, Goofan said in distress, "No, Ping Ping isn't full yet. Why can Mom eat 10 plates in 1 meal? Ping Ping can only eat 1 plate in 1 meal. Brother, can you go to the kitchen and steal another plate for Ping Ping? Ping Ping likes Brother the most. At most, Ping Ping doesn't want Brother to read stories to Ping Ping tonight. Ping Ping can sleep alone." The little loli pulled Goofan's sleeves and begged, "Brother, you're the one who's the most. At most, Ping Ping doesn't want Brother to read stories to Ping Ping tonight. My brother, you must not agree to her unreasonable request, or else she will pester me to read stories to her at night if she doesn't want you to read stories to her." A girl who looked like she had entered puberty immediately said to Goofan. Then she threatened, "Brother, if you dare to give her another plate of meat to eat, I will tell Ching Ping's mother about what happened today." "Oomph. Gu Yuan, don't think that you're great just because you're Ping Ping's sister. If it wasn't for my mother who only knows how to eat and doesn't pester Dad, why are you a few years older than me?" Hearing the girl's words, the little girl suddenly exploded. "How many times have I said, don't call me Gu Yuan. My name is Gu Yuan. I'm not round at all, but you stupid little girl, your face is as fat as a bun. Be careful that no one wants you when you grow up." Gu Yuan screamed, "If no one wants it, then no one wants it." Little Lolita made a face at Gu Yuan, then threw herself into Goofan's arms and said, "At worst, I could be Big Brother Goofan's wife, and Big Brother Goofan will take Ping Ping as his wife, right?" Goofan's expression didn't change in the slightest when he heard his own sister's words, because Goofan didn't know how many times he had heard similar words. His other mothers also liked to tease Goofan about this matter. Goofan had long been used to this kind of scene. "No, Big Brother Goofan is mine. Don't even think about it." When Gu Yuan heard this, she immediately exploded. She immediately started tearing at Gu Ping. At first, Goofan tried to mediate the situation, but he eventually gave up. He focused on eating and no longer cared about these 2 sisters who were in the middle of the Azura field. "My dear sister, why are you 2 fighting again? This is the 3rd time this week." At this time, a young girl who was 2 or 3 years older than Gu Yuan walked in. After seeing the 2 arguing, she said with a headache, "It's not the 3rd time this week, it's the 4th time this week. Sister, you forgot today is Thursday, not Wednesday." Another young man who came in behind the young girl said. This young man was only 7 or 8 years old, but he looked like the calmest person in the group, second only to Goofan. It was worth mentioning that these 2 young men and women both carried long swords on their backs. If one looked closely, they were actually both man-made sword ladies. "Sister Shuang, Brother Feng, how was your practice today?" Seeing that the 2 siblings had returned, Gu Yuan immediately ended her argument with Gu Ping and went up to them. "Same old. Ling's mother said that I still haven't mastered the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. She also said that I need at least another 3 years of hard practice to reach Father's achievement when he was 12 years old." Gu Shuang said with a bitter smile, "I've already gained some insight into the move Chaotic Stars today. Lin's mother said that I can practice the next move in another year." Gu Feng also said lightly, "Damn, Brother Feng, you've already started practicing the Chaotic Stars? Damn, it's really infuriating to compare with others. I've been practicing for so long, but I still haven't mastered the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. Brother Feng, you've already started practicing the Chaotic Stars. My God, you're not even 8 years old yet. You're already better than Father when he was young. Oh, I heard from Doyu's mother that Father was still working for someone else when he was 8 years old. He hadn't even mastered the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. Brother Feng has indeed surpassed father, Gu Ping said as she secretly stuffed red braised pork into her mouth. This red braised pork was actually stolen from the bowl in front of Gu Fan. I can't compare to father. Gu Feng shook his head. I've been practicing swordsmanship since I was 3 years old. But father only really stepped into the door of swordsmanship when he was 10 years old. This chaos swordsmanship was discovered by father from the chaos. This set of swordsmanship is so profound that every time I practice it, I can't help but sigh at father's terrifying understanding of swordsmanship. Only then could he create such a set of swordsmanship. Listening to his sister and brothers talking, Gu Fan couldn't help but lower his head. At the same time, he clenched his fists tightly. Obviously, Gu Fan was not in a good mood. Come on, father is not as good as my brother Feng. Gu Yuan patted Gu Feng's head happily. Then, she looked at the door behind Gu Feng and asked curiously, "Where are the mothers? Why aren't they here for dinner yet? And father, why isn't father here yet?" "We're almost done eating," Gu Yuan asked in confusion. "Father is at the gazebo looking at the scenery. I called father, but he said he's not eating today." Gu Fan replied calmly. "What about the mothers?" Gu Yuan asked again. "Today is the 3rd anniversary of grandmother Meiyun's death. At the same time, it's also the day that big sister disappeared. The mothers have gone to the Dao courtyard to pay their respects." Gu Fan answered, "Oh, today is such an important day. Why didn't I know?" Gu Yuan was shocked. Then, she covered her mouth and moved closer to Gu Fan. "Brother, I've rarely heard rumors about big sister since I was young. I only know that such a person exists. Do you think we really have a big sister who is older than us by more than 20 years? I don't know. I've only heard this rumor." Gu Fan shook his head. "No way. You grew up with father. Didn't father tell you about big sister?" Gu Yuan asked in disbelief. "No, I've asked a few times, but father has never been willing to talk about big sister. My other mothers are also afraid of this matter, so they won't talk about it either. But one thing is for sure, big sister is probably not dead. She's just angry with father. I don't know where she went, so father doesn't want to talk about big sister." Gu Fan said, "Sigh, I really want to see what big sister looks like and what kind of personality she has. I'm so curious." Gu Yuan pouted. Gu Fan put down his bowl and chopsticks and said, "I'm done. You guys eat slowly. I'm going to practice my sword." "Don't, big brother. Let's continue chatting. It's not like there's any use for you to practice the sword." After Gu Yuan said this, Gu Fan walked even faster. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared in front of everyone. "You stupid child, how can you say that?" Seeing Gu Fan disappear quickly, Gu Shuang slapped Gu Yuan's head hard. The slap made Gu Yuan grimace. "Have you forgotten that our big brother doesn't have any sword essence in his body? Is he destined to be a sword wielder? How can you say such things in front of him?" Gu Shuang said with a look of exasperation. After a few minutes, in the huge training field of the Gu family, a man was holding a long sword and practicing a set of sword techniques. This man first used the basic sword techniques, then quickly switched to the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. He performed the 9 words proverb of the 9 words proverb of the mysterious heaven 9 swords with incredible fluency. In just a short 3 minutes, he finished practicing the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. After that, the 9 swords of mysterious heaven quickly changed to the chaos sword technique. Chaos splitting heavens, chaos flying immortal, chaos stars, chaos golden lotus, chaos legend, chaos return. He performed the entire chaos sword technique smoothly. However, after he finished practicing the chaos sword technique, the man's strength was clearly exhausted. In the end, he collapsed to the ground, panting heavily. At the same time, he looked at the sky blankly. Why don't I have any sword essence?" This man was Gu Fan, and at this moment, he was roaring unwillingly from the depths of his heart. Although Gu Fan was very familiar with the 9 swords of mysterious heaven and the chaos sword technique, and even had about 30% of his father's standard, anyone with a discerning eye could see that these 2 sword techniques were empty and empty. Although these 2 sets of sword techniques were performed very well, there was nothing in them to support these sword techniques. It was like cement without steel bars. If it was used to build a building, a small wind would probably destroy the entire building. And the steel bars that were used to support the building were none other than the sword essence that the sword wielder relied on to survive. Coincidentally, Gufan didn't have any sword essence. Why? Why? Gufan clenched his fists and smashed the remaining soil again and again. Even when some of the sharp objects in the soil scratched his palms, Gufan didn't feel anything and let his blood soak into the soil. Chapter 1580. Dong 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 dong. Gufan, who had unknowingly fallen asleep on the field, opened his eyes in the evening. He was jolted awake by the long chime of the bell and immediately jumped up from the ground in shock. The bell's ringing? The bell's ringing. At this moment, Gufan was greatly shocked because the Gu family's bell was not used to tell the time, but was specially used to gather the people of the Gu family. Once the bell rang, it meant that something big had happened in the Gu family, and in Gufan's 20 years of life, he had only heard the bell ring twice. The first time the bell rang was 14 years ago. That year, his father, who had been busy outside for 6 years, returned home for the first time. He rang the bell of the newly built Gu family manor house. At the same time, he told everyone that he would never leave again. He would stay in the Gu family manor house for the rest of his life and would not go out anymore. He would use this time to recuperate and take care of his children. At that time, Gufan was still a pitiful child who had never seen his father's face. The second time the bell rang was 3 years ago. That year, his grandmother, when Maiden, had passed away, and his father had rung the bell to send when Maiden off. Apart from that, the bell had never been rung again. I wonder what happened today for the bell to be rung again. Could it be that another one of my family has passed away? Thinking of this, Gufan immediately ran out of the family hall. When Gufan arrived at the hall, all of the members of the family, including his father's 12 sword maidens, his 12 mothers, his disciple Lu Shihua, his first mother Liu Ling, and his 4 siblings Gu Shuang, Gu Yuan, Gu Feng, and Gu Ping were present. Even his first mother's son, Fleeting Time, was present. This younger brother, who was a year younger than Gufan, had officially become the head of the Fleeting family. However, Gufan was not close to his younger brother. This was because his younger brother had been raised in the Fleeting family ever since he was born. He would only meet Gufan once during the new year. Their relationship was very distant, and Fleeting Time did not seem to care about his older brother at all when he found out that Gufan did not have the Jiansu. Gufan had even heard Fleeting Time say that he wanted to become the strongest in the world, to be able to match his father's strength. At the same time, he would have to become the family leader of both the Gu family and the Lunyan family, combining the strength of these two families and becoming a supreme existence like his father. Without a doubt, Crazy Fleeting Time was as arrogant as his name suggested. Gufan did not like his younger brother. Apart from Fleeting Time, Lu Shihua's younger brother, Luyin, was there as well. Luyin was Lu Shihua's younger brother in name, but he was actually 10 years younger than Luyin. He looked like his father, and even an idiot would know that Luyin was his father's son. His father had never denied it, but Lu Shihua refused to admit it. She insisted that Luyin was her biological brother. Please, Lu Shihua's parents had passed away for almost 50 years. How could she possibly have a brother who was only 10 years old? Gufan felt that the Gu family was in a mess, but it was strangely harmonious. Nothing bad had ever happened in the Gu family, and the siblings were very kind to each other. Even Fleeting Time treated his siblings extremely well, to the point that it was annoying. What's going on today? Father, are we going to gather everyone together? There aren't this many people even during the new year. Gufan thought curiously. Although Luyin would usually appear at home, when it was New Year or when the family was reunited, Luyin and Lu Shihua would not appear at the Gu family. Instead, they would stay at the Lu family's house and live alone. Gufan did not know the reason behind this, but the mothers did not express any doubts about this matter. Clearly, everyone knew the reason behind this, and at that moment, all the members of the Gu family were gathered here. This meant that something big was about to happen. But why was his father, Gahan, not here at such a crucial time? No one knew where he was. Yo, you're all here. Suddenly, A frivolous and playful voice sounded in the auditorium. Then, a handsome man with a lazy aura walked into the auditorium. "Who are you? Why are you here?" Seeing this man, Gu Fan immediately jumped out and asked. He was the eldest brother of the second generation of the Gu family, and he knew everything about the Gu family. He knew all the friends of the Gu family like the back of his hand, and he had even met all the influential people in Huaxia City a few times. But Gu Fan could guarantee that this man who had suddenly jumped out of nowhere. "You must be Gu Fan." "Very good." The man's gaze paused on Gu Fan for a while, and he nodded in satisfaction. This action caused Gu Fan to feel a chill run down his spine, as if something was staring at his back. "Who are you? If you don't tell me the truth, don't blame me for taking action." Gu Fan immediately unsheathed his long sword. Even though Gu Fan was only holding an ordinary sword, even though Gu Fan did not have any sword essence in his body, even though Gu Fan's true strength might not even be able to defeat a treasured sword wielder, Gu Fan still jumped out without hesitation. "Who are you? Tell me now, or I won't forgive you." Gu Yuan immediately unsheathed her sword when she saw her brother making a move, and the rest of her siblings quickly followed suit. Even Fleeting Time and Lu Yin were no exception. This made Gu Fan feel slightly more at ease. Even if he could not defeat this intruder, his siblings would definitely be able to teach him a lesson. Don't. Everyone was a family. Why did they have to pull out their swords? "Look, is any of your mothers willing to fight?" Gu Fan noticed that the mothers were unusually calm after hearing the man's words. Despite the complicated look in their eyes, none of them seemed to have any intention of fighting, and allowed the man to stand on the stage. This made Gu Fan feel that something was amiss. "All right, we're not enemies, we're relatives. Let me introduce myself. I'm Fleeting Maple, and I'm an old friend of your father's. I'm here to save my parents." The man smiled. "Fleeting Maple, you're a member of the Fleeting family?" It was Fleeting Time's turn to be stunned when he heard the man's self-introduction. He stared at the man who called himself Fleeting Maple and tried to recall the genealogy of the Fleeting family. He was certain that there was no such thing as Fleeting Maple in his family's genealogy. "Where did you come from? How dare you pretend to be a member of the Fleeting family? You'd better tell me the truth, or don't blame me for being rude. The dignity of the Fleeting family will not be sullied." Fleeting Time said angrily. "That's enough. Does anyone with the surname Fleeting have to be a member of the Fleeting family? If my surname is Gu, does that mean I'm a member of the Gu family?" Fleeting Maple rolled his eyes at Fleeting Time, then turned his attention back to Gu Fan. "Actually, I didn't want to come here, but I have a favor to ask of you. I wonder if you're willing to help me." "What is it?" Gu Fan asked warily. "It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. It's just a world that's in chaos, and we need someone to calm it down. However, that world doesn't have the bloodline of our Fleeting Time family. As the saying goes, we should keep the goodies within the family, and the Fleeting Time family and Guhan are on the same side. It just so happens that you have some talent, so I hope that I can send you to that world. Don't worry, you can come back as soon as you've stabilized that world. It's very convenient." "Calm the world? Are you talking about those two-dimensional worlds? Didn't Father give a strict order that no human was allowed to enter the dimensional space, let alone enter other dimensional worlds? I can't go against Father's orders." Gu Fan shook his head firmly. "Your father's orders are only for normal humans. It has no effect on his son. Right, take a look at this. This is a keepsake that your father gave me." Fleeting Maple suddenly passed a ring to Gu Fan, causing him to jump in fright. This ring was none other than the jasper ring that his father wore on his finger every day. Gu Fan didn't know when this ring had fallen into Fleeting Maple's hands. "When did you snatch this from Father's hands? Did you hurt Father?" Gu Fan immediately said vigilantly, "Forget it. No one in this world can hurt your father. Your father gave this to me personally and asked me to pass it to you." Fleeting Maple suddenly pulled Gu Fan's hand and placed the jasper ring on Gu Fan's finger. Gu Fan felt his head spin, and a dimensional gate opened up in front of him. Through the dimensional gate, Gu Fan could see a whole new world on the other side. He could vaguely see that it was a huge and lively world filled with people. Gufan suddenly felt a strong urge in his heart when he saw the world on the other side of the dimensional gate. This urge seemed to be urging Gufan to step through the dimensional gate and enter that world. As long as he entered that world, all of Gufan's worries and all of the tragedies caused by not having the sword element would be reversed in that world, just like his father. Subconsciously, Gufan took a step forward and prepared to enter that world. Child, don't. Long Xiaoya, Gufan's mother, suddenly jumped up from her seat and looked at her son with a face full of tears. Don't go. Little Xiaoya, my husband has already said that this is Fan-er's destiny. Do you want Fan-er to be troubled for the rest of his life? Do you want to live a mediocre life? Do you want to let down Fan-er's natural, pure-blooded human bloodline? Do you really think this is good for Fan-er? Qi Jian, who was sitting next to Long Xiaoya, suddenly berated her. At this moment, Gufan finally understood that this was really his father's will. His father was the one who agreed to let him go to the other world, but he was kept in the dark. So father doesn't want to see me. He doesn't even want me to exist in this world. Gufan suddenly felt a great sorrow in his heart. He turned around and knelt down in front of Long Xiaoya. He deeply kowtowed and said, "Mother, please don't worry. Your son will definitely be like father and have great power. I will pacify that world, and I will return to accompany mother as soon as possible. I will never leave again." After Gufan kowtowed 3 times, he jumped into the dimensional gate without any hesitation. The dimensional gate then closed. At the same time, Fleeting Maple also disappeared. Silly child, mother is already 56 years old. How many more years does mother have to wait for you? Long Xiaoya cried until her entire body was covered in tears, and she weakly collapsed on the chair. Don't worry, he will come back, but when that time comes, our child will be the hero in his own heart. He will become the hero in the hearts of 1,000,000,000 people. Unknowingly, Guhan had already appeared in the auditorium. He gently patted Long Xiaoya's shoulder and said, Long Xiaoya threw her head into Guhan's arms and began to cry unbridledly. Father, did you gather all of us here just to send Brother Gufan off? Fleeting Time bowed respectfully to Guhan and asked in a sonorous voice. That's not it. Guhan shook his head and looked into the distance. I just want to tell you that I've made the final preparations. It's time for me to meet the mysterious Tao. Liu Ling and Lu Shihua's bodies trembled when they heard this. They stared at Guhan in disbelief. What? Have you found a way to meet the Tao? Yes. Guhan nodded, and with a wave of his hand, the 12 sword ladies transformed into swords and flew into Guhan's scabbard, leaving only Lu Shihua and Liu Ling in the hall. I'll leave the humans to the 2 of you. When Yifei returns, the 3 of you will work together to protect the humans. What about you? Liu Ling grabbed Guhan's hand. As long as the 2 of you are alive, I will be alive. Guhan held Liu Ling and Lu Shihua's hands tightly. If I die one day, don't worry. The 2 of you will be with me very soon. Just wait for me here. Chapter 1581. If Guhan really wanted to defeat sect leader Tong Tian, he had to become a sage. Only after becoming a sage could Guhan fight with sect leader Tong Tian, who had recovered to his peak. However, if he wanted to become a sage, he had to witness the operation of the Great Way with his own eyes. If he wanted to see the Great Way with his own eyes, he had to go through the way of heaven. This was an interlocking cycle. If anything went wrong, the whole plan could not be realized. However, it was also because of this crucial way of heaven that Guhan was in a deadlock. The only chance to recreate the way of heaven was used by Guhan to save Liu Ling. At this time, there was no Zhu Wu for Guhan to replicate this process again. Therefore, Guhan could only think of other ways to create a way of heaven. Yes, after Guhan thought about it again and again, only by recreating a way of heaven could he finally achieve his goal of seeing the Great Way. But recreating a way of heaven, this was something that no one had ever expected. Even Hong Jun ancestor did not know how to recreate a way of heaven. In the beginning, Guhan was also confused. He did not know how to achieve this goal, which sounded incredible. Even when he fought with sect leader Tontian, Gahan still had no clue. It was not until Gahan was forced by the human food crisis to try to create a nutrient solution manufacturing machine with fragments of his consciousness that he suddenly got a clue. When he completely created a nutrient solution manufacturing machine, Gahan suddenly had a glimmer of enlightenment. This enlightenment made Gahan unable to grasp the beginning or the end. He only vaguely felt that this was the key to creating the way of heaven. Therefore, Gahan simply took the opportunity to create countless nutrient solution manufacturing machines, try to further grasp that glimmer of enlightenment. Unfortunately, no matter how many nutrient solution manufacturing machines Gahan created, he could never find that glimmer of enlightenment at the beginning. After the incident with Qing Pin, Gahan learned more secrets of the prehistoric times through Qing Ping's memory. He saw the scene of Pangu creating the world with his own eyes. He even saw the scene of Pangu evolving all things and the birth of the way of heaven. At this moment, Gahan finally figured out the meaning of that glimmer of enlightenment. If he could create all things like Pangu, he might be able to create a way of heaven. It just so happened that the humans were about to build a new base city. So Gahan made a prompt decision to use the opportunity of building a new Huaxia city to build every single one of the humans' creations. Thus, Gahan went missing for 5 years. During those 5 years, Gahan walked around the borders of Huaxia city, using the alloy that the humans gave him to build the city walls of Huaxia city. At the same time, he collected all the different things that he could find in Huaxia city. Finally, after wandering around Huaxia city, Gahan had collected all the different things that he could find. In the following 10 years, apart from spending time with his wife and the Sword Lady, the only thing that Gahan continued to do was to recreate all the different things that he had collected with his will fragments and place them in his fleeting time manner. Although Gahan's crafting speed was as fast as lightning, it still took Gahan more than 10 years to recreate all the different things in the world. However, what left Gahan in despair was that he still had no idea how to create a way of heaven even after he had recreated all the things. It was as if this was telling Gahan that Gahan had been on the wrong path for the past 20 years. It was impossible to recreate the way of heaven. That afternoon, when Gahan was about to go to the dining hall for lunch, he suddenly heard his children talking about the Sword Lady. He also saw Gu Fan running to the training ground and realized that he was depressed. At the same time, he asked the heavens why he could not become a sword bearer. It would be great if I could create an exclusive sword lady for Fan. Gahan naturally loved his children, which was why such a thought popped up in his mind. As a result, this thought ran uncontrollably in Gahan's mind. Gahan suddenly realized that he had not actually created everything in the world because he had never created a sword lady before. Gahan had created sword ladies before, but they were not real sword ladies. They were artificial sword ladies without any life. Only by creating natural sword ladies could Gahan achieve the achievement of creating everything in the world. It wasn't difficult for Gahan to create an innate sword maiden. After all, Gahan could already mass-produce artificial sword maidens. Compared to artificial sword maidens, the only thing they lacked was a soul. A real soul. A soul that could give the sword its own unique existence. In fact, Gahan could actually create a framework for a soul. All he needed was a fragment of consciousness and a large amount of soul solution to strengthen the fragment of consciousness. However, the real key was how to give the fragment of consciousness a bit of spirituality. Only by infusing the fragment of spirituality could the soul of the natural sword lady be born. It was only when fleeting Maple suddenly appeared in front of Gahan and pointed at the jasper ring that Gahan had been wearing all this time that Gahan came to a realization. He infused the jasper ring into the natural sword lady, and as a result, a brand new natural sword lady created by Gahan was born. This unprecedented natural sword lady created by a human was given to Gu Fan by Gahan in the form of a ring. It was the last form of protection for Gu Fan in the New World. As long as the ring was with him, Gahan believed that his child would be able to return safely. The moment this natural sword lady was forged, Guhan had a complete epiphany. He understood what the so-called heavenly Tao was, and the path to the great Tao was open just like that. In reality, the heavenly Tao was a lie passed down from the prehistoric era. Or rather, it was a misunderstanding intentionally or unintentionally. The heavenly Tao did not exist in the outside world at all, but in one's heart. This was a mystical, spiritual manifestation. Only when one's heart was perfect enough to accommodate all things in the world, and when one could see through everything in the world and build a world in one's heart, the heavenly Tao would be born from one's heart, and then lead one towards the existence of the great Tao. This was something that even the 6 sages like old Lord Taishang could not understand. Although they had become sages, and the heavenly Tao had been born in their hearts. They thought that they had seen the heavenly Tao from the outside world, and would never have guessed that the heavenly Tao existed in the depths of one's heart. Perhaps this is what old Lord Hongjun wanted. He's such a selfish person. After Guhan understood this point, he could not help but sigh in his heart. At the same time, he felt a bit of disdain towards his predecessor. The reason why Hongjun's sword ancestor did not tell the truth to his disciple was most likely because he wanted to perfect the heavenly Tao by himself, so that he could go one step further and reach a whole new realm, so that his disciple would not overtake him from behind and be one step ahead of him. However, Hongjun never thought that he would die in the hands of his disciple. After Guhan left the Gu clan manor house, he slowly walked forward step by step, almost as if he was taking a stroll. He passed by the surrounding houses, crossed a few rivers, and stepped on a flight of stairs that led up the mountain. Finally, he stood on the highest point of a mountain peak. This mountain was not high, and there were at least a dozen mountains around it that were much higher than this one. However, this did not mean anything to Gahan. In fact, it did not matter whether there was a mountain or not. Gahan just wanted to find a quiet place to sit down quietly and slowly observe the great Tao. And this mountain happened to be such a place. However, to everyone's surprise, when Guhan sat down on the ground, his body actually began to slowly stiffen, and a deathly pale color appeared on his body. In the end, he actually turned into a human-shaped stone. This seemed to be a synchronized process with the Sword Maiden, but when he synchronized with the Sword Maiden, he was still a human, just that he was as stiff as a stone. However, at this time, Gahan was clearly a human-shaped stone. After a few days, a pair of mother and daughter walked up the mountain with a flower basket. The daughter happily pointed to a stone statue in the distance and said, "Mom, look, there's a stone statue." "Oh." The mother walked up curiously to take a look, and then her face immediately became serious. She solemnly said to her daughter, "So this is the statue of His Majesty the Sword God. Let's quickly kneel down and kowtow to His Majesty the Sword God 3 times. Let His Majesty the Sword God bless you, so that you can enter the Gu family villa's #1 high school this year. That is one of the best schools in China. You might even be classmates with His Majesty the Sword God's child. Quickly kneel down and kowtow." The child was still ignorant and was forcibly dragged by her mother to kowtow to the stone statue 3 times. Only then did she leave the mountain in satisfaction. When she left, the mother was still thinking, "Who placed a statue of His Majesty the Sword God on this mountain? I didn't see it last month. Forget it, it's not strange. Even our community is going to build a 20-meter statue of His Majesty the Sword God soon. It's not strange to put one on the mountain." Chapter 1582. Just like that, the statue of the Sword God naturally appeared in the daily lives of the residents living near the mountain peak. The residents also knew that there was a statue of the Sword God on the mountain peak. Out of respect for the Sword God, many people would bring fruits and vegetables for sacrificial offerings to the statue. Some tourists who came to the mountain would also take the initiative to kneel in front of the statue and pray for the blessings of the Sword God. Later on, there was a rumor that a traveler had accidentally lost his footing and fell down the mountain when he was climbing the mountain. In the end, the statue of the Sword God manifested itself and turned into a real person. It leaped from the mountain peak and saved the unlucky tourist's life. Although the story was very convincing, Those with discerning eyes knew that it was nothing more than a story that had been passed down. However, this didn't stop the people from cherishing and loving the sword god even more. Therefore, the people who lived nearby took this opportunity to hold a grand memorial around the statue, which was called the sword god ceremony. Every festival, humans would hold a grand ceremony to celebrate the sword god. They would wear all kinds of gorgeous clothes and parade from the foot of the mountain to the top of the mountain. In the end, they would sing and dance for the statue of the sword god and solemnly pray for the eternal happiness and health of the sword god. This kind of sword god festival lasted for 10 years. When the 11th year of the sword god festival was about to begin, another pair of mother and daughter came up the mountain with a flower basket in their hands. However, the flower basket was filled with all kinds of food and offerings. The mother carefully and piously placed the food in front of the statue of the sword god. Then, she said to her daughter earnestly, "My dear, kowtow to the sword god 3 times." Back then, I was lucky enough to be admitted to Guja Village's #1 high school after kowtowing to the sword god. That was how I met your father in this high school and gave birth to you. You're about to reach the age of elementary school. Be a good girl and kowtow to the sword god 3 times. Ask the sword god to bless you so that you can go to Guja Village's #1 elementary school. Do you understand? Okay. The little lowly nodded obediently. At this moment, the mother's expression suddenly changed. She carefully looked around and finally said with a frown, "My dear daughter, stay here and kowtow. I'm going to the toilet. I'll be back soon. Don't run around." "Got it, Mom," the little lowly said with a smile. After watching her mother leave, she obediently followed her mother's instructions and began to obediently close her eyes and kowtow to the statue. As a result, when she kowtowed for the 3rd time, the little lowly, who had her eyes closed, suddenly felt an extremely intense light coming from outside her eyelids. It was so piercing that her tears almost flowed out. Immediately, she felt so uncomfortable that she began to cry loudly. "Little girl, don't cry. I didn't notice that you were still here. I shouldn't get carried away. I shouldn't get carried away. Don't get carried away. Come, this candy is for you. Don't cry." A gentle voice like flowing water sounded in the little lowly's ear. The little lowly raised her head and saw an uncle with a stubble beard and dirty clothes appearing in front of her. At the same time, he put an ordinary-looking candy in her hand. "Mom said that I can't eat candy given by strangers." The little lowly looked at the uncle timidly and said, "It's okay. I promise you that as long as you eat this candy, you can definitely achieve your wish and get into Guja Village's #1 elementary school." The uncle with a stubble beard said shamelessly, "But this is Mom's wish, not mine. I don't want to go to Guja Village's #1 elementary school. I want to go to Baiju Elementary School. My best friend is studying there. I want to continue to be friends with him." The little lowly said in a childish voice, "It's the same. After eating this candy, you can still go to Baiju Elementary School." The uncle said with a smile. At this moment, there was a sudden sound of hurried footsteps coming from afar. After the mother hurriedly went to the toilet, she suddenly found a vagabond standing next to her daughter. She immediately ran over and looked at the vagabond with a vigilant face. "What do you want? Don't even think about doing anything bad to my daughter. To tell you the truth, my husband is the manager of the Gu family. One word from him can make you suffer. Don't worry, I don't have any bad intentions towards this child. I just accidentally hurt her eyes just now. I'm just apologizing to her." The vagabond smiled slightly. He looked extremely sloppy, but when this vagabond smiled, the mother could suddenly feel a warm and strong sunshine radiating from this vagabond. This made the mother, who hadn't been moved for a long time, suddenly feel a ripple in her heart like when she met her husband for the first time in high school. "What's wrong with me? How can I have such thoughts about letting my husband down?" The mother lowered her head and thought to herself in shame. "All right, your daughter just told me that she doesn't want to go to Guja Village #1 elementary school. She wants to go to Baiju Elementary School to find her friend. I hope you can fulfill her wish. After all, only children have such simple friendships." The vagabond said gently, "How can I do that? Although Baiju Elementary School is also an elementary school founded by a celestial sword-tier sword wielder, I heard that the sword wielder left his hometown for Yuan-ko. He even went to a place outside Huaxia City to live. The school he founded has a bad reputation in our community. How can I let my child study there? The mother objected firmly. Oh, it seems that Ku Rakin has found Sha Sha. Gohan was stunned. He knew that Ku Rakin had never forgotten about his Sha Sha. He was always looking for her. It seemed like he had found his Sha Sha. P.S. The hole for Sha Sha has been buried. I just haven't found a suitable opportunity to fill it. If I fill it now, I'm afraid it'll just be an exaggeration. However, Sha Sha's ending and story have been hinted at in the novel. I believe many readers have already guessed it. Let's just treat it as an open-ended story. There's something you might not know, the vagabond suddenly said. Actually, Ku Rakin isn't the only one who owns shares in Baiju Elementary School. Gohan owns 50% of the shares, too. By the way, the children of the Gu family never attend Gujia Village No. 1 Elementary School. His children go to Baiju Elementary School. Why? How do you know all this? The mother asked dumbly. Because there are too many people like you 14 years ago who wish to be classmates with the children of the Gu family. Gohan doesn't like it. He just wants his children to have a normal childhood. The vagabond had a warm and nostalgic smile on his face. The warmth and nostalgia made the mother's heart flutter. She even began to fantasize about doing some intimate things with the vagabond. What the hell am I thinking? The mother slapped her face a few times to wake herself up from her fantasies. When she was about to ask the vagabond again, she suddenly realized that the vagabond had disappeared. Baby, where did that uncle go? The mother asked immediately. Uncle jumped down. He said he was going to protect humans. The child said innocently as he pointed at the cliff in the distance. What? Is he a lunatic who wants to die? The mother was shocked. Oh no, we can't stay here for long. Pack up and leave. Just as the mother was about to pack up her offerings, she was shocked to find that the statue of the sword god that had been there all along had disappeared. Oh my God, could it be? The mother suddenly remembered the vagabond's face. If she shaved off his messy hair and unkempt beard, he seemed to look very similar to a certain portrait that hung in her house every day. The mother didn't dare to think about it any further. She immediately ran away with her daughter. However, it was worth mentioning that when school reopened, she really did bring her daughter to Baiju Primary School. It was a clean and quiet school, but it seemed to be full of beauty. After discovering that the statue of the sword god was missing, the residents nearby were first shocked, and then they wailed incessantly. This was because the Sword God Festival's reputation had spread far and wide, and the number of tourists who came to visit the Sword God Festival increased year by year. If the important statue of the Sword God was gone, wouldn't their source of income be completely cut off? However, there were always more solutions and problems. Soon, the statue of the Sword God reappeared on the mountain peak. It looked exactly the same as before. At the same time, a craftsman at the foot of the mountain who was famous for his stone carvings was also enjoying a prosperous spring festival. Everything was so perfect. Ticket office of Guanghui Amusement Park, Dandong Community, Liaoning District. Adult ticket price is 280 yuan per ticket. Children under 1. For meters are 100 yuan per ticket. Children under 5 years old are free. At the same time, outside the ticket office of a famous tourist attraction in Dandong Community, Liaoning District, thousands of miles away from Yuzhong District, a homeless man dressed in sloppy clothes suddenly appeared outside the ticket office of a famous tourist attraction. The moment the homeless man appeared, he read the notice board at the entrance of the ticket office loudly, as if he wanted to show off that he could read. Comrade, the rescue station is not here. You can go in that direction. The nearby security guard saw him and immediately walked up with a sword. At the same time, it was obvious that he wanted to chase the homeless man away. Let me go, I'm here for a tour. The homeless man pushed the security guard away with a slap and said calmly at the same time, You need to buy a ticket for a tour. Do you have money? The security guard was well trained. Although he was angry because he was pushed away, he still asked calmly, Here you go. The homeless man took out the personal terminal and took the initiative to scan the scanner. However, To the homeless man's surprise, he did not hear the familiar beep. Instead, there was a strong alarm coming from the scanner. What's going on? Why did you call the police? Could it be that this kid is a fugitive? The security guard immediately held his long sword nervously when he heard the alarm and looked at Gahan vigilantly. No, the version of his personal terminal is too old. It seems to be the version of the personal terminal before the Frozen era. This version of the personal terminal was completely discontinued 10 years ago, so the scanner can't read it. The ticket seller inside replied, "Damn, it seems like this kid has been homeless for more than 10 years. Why didn't you go to the police station to get a new personal terminal? It's not like you're charging for it." Hearing the ticket seller's words, the security guard immediately breathed a sigh of relief and then said to the homeless man with dissatisfaction, "It's so troublesome. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have approved the Guanghui Amusement Park's chargeable tour." The homeless man sighed. He spoke as if he was the one who approved the Guanghui Amusement Park's chargeable tour. "All right, hurry up and leave. If you don't leave, I'll deduct your bonus." The security guard was ready to chase the homeless man away again, but this time he missed. The homeless man who had been standing there just a moment ago had disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. This kid runs fast. At least he knows what's good for him. The security guard muttered. There was a void seal here, and even an Emperor Sword level sword wielder could not enter the void. Of course, this vagrant could not possibly be an Emperor Sword level sword wielder no matter what. Chapter 1583. After Huaxia City was built, the problem of the Radiance Amusement Park and the dimensional gap he was in was placed on Gahan's table. Of course, Gahan couldn't allow the 300,000 humans to continue living in the Radiance Amusement Park like zombies. Therefore, Gahan simply brought the humans in the Radiant City back to the normal world. After breathing in normal air and eating normal human food, the intelligence of the humans in the Radiant City clearly began to improve. They were no longer lifeless and had regained the vitality of humans. However, even the uncles in their 40s or 50s became children less than 3 years old the moment they left the Radiant City. They couldn't take care of themselves at all and needed others to take care of them. After a rather arduous period of education, the young Radiance people who could accept the outside world gradually integrated into normal society. As for the Radiance people who couldn't accept it, or those who became old and clumsy, even if they accepted it, they would continue to be placed in nursing homes, and the government would be responsible for supporting them until the end. This was also the last thing Gahan could do for I Chingping. The problem of the Radiant City was easy to solve, but the problem of the Radiance Amusement Park wasn't so easy to solve. After all, there were still 200 to 300 Yuan Ko living in the Radiance Amusement Park. The problem of these 200 to 300 Yuan Ko would eventually become a problem that Gahan had to solve. To put it simply, according to the fastest way to solve it, of course, Gahan would arrange for a group of swordbearers to go on a killing spree and kill all the Yuan Ko. That would naturally be the end of it, and there wouldn't be any other problems. However, Gahan obviously couldn't do that. First of all, the Yuan Ko in the Radiant City hadn't done anything outrageous. They had originally hidden in the Radiance Amusement Park because they weren't willing to fight with humans. On the contrary, they had always been protecting the humans in the Radiant City from harm, working hard to ensure their survival. To humans, this was a huge favor. Moreover, whether it was Artoria, Gu Xuanwu, or Qiando Isuzu, they were all closely related to Gahan and the Glory Amusement Park. Based on these connections, it was impossible for Gahan to kill Yuan Ko in the Glory Amusement Park. In that case, how about sending the Yuan Ko girls from the Guanghuan Amusement Park to the Freedom Metropolis and letting them stay with the Freemen? This was a very good idea. Gahan had intended to do the same from the beginning, and he had also taken the initiative to contact the mayor of the Free City and obtained his permission to accept this batch of Yuan Ko who had suddenly arrived. However, when he tried to communicate with the Yuan Ko of Guanghui Amusement Park, he was unanimously rejected. They expressed that they would rather die in Guanghui Amusement Park than leave this place. Helpless, Gohan could only come to an agreement with these Yuan-ko girls. The dimensional rift where Guanghui Amusement Park was located was China's land. This was a matter of principle, and there was absolutely no room for negotiation. However, on behalf of China, Gohan authorized these Yuan-ko girls to live in this dimensional rift forever and live according to his previous rules. As long as they didn't harm any humans, humans couldn't harm the Yuan-ko living here for any reason. However, without the permission of humans, these Yuan-ko girls were absolutely not allowed to leave the dimensional rift. Otherwise, if they were discovered, they could be punished at any time. There was no limit to the severity of the punishment, and even death was fine. Just like that, Guanghui Amusement Park's Yuan-ko girls became the only surviving Yuan-ko girls in China. However, their living range was limited to the dimensional rift. Originally, Gohan's plan was to let these Yuan-ko girls live in the dimensional rift quietly. However, after a few days, these Yuan-ko girls suddenly complained to Gohan that Gohan had taken away all the people from Guanghui Amusement Park. The entire Guanghui Amusement Park instantly became deserted and became like a dead place. It no longer had the liveliness of the past, which made them feel very sad and aggrieved. Therefore, these Yuan-ko girls creatively made a request to Gohan. They hoped that Gohan could approve Guanghui Amusement Park's opening to the public, opening the ticketing system, and allowing humans to enter the amusement park. It had to be said that this was a very bold suggestion. If humans entered Guanghui Amusement Park and were killed by the Yuan-ko, it would not be a simple matter. However, Gohan finally agreed with a flourish of his pen. The current human society was not a society where the entire zoo was sealed off and overprotected when a tourist was bitten to death by a tiger. Humans in this society had long been indifferent to death. Even if a group of humans died in the amusement park, it would not be a big deal. As long as the tourists were informed of the dangers inside and told not to seek death, if they still did, then they would be dealt with according to the law. Moreover, Gohan was also very interested to know if Yuan-ko could really coexist peacefully with humans. Therefore, Guanghui Amusement Park's plan to open to the public was approved, and it opened to the public at a price of more than 200 yuan. When Guanghui Amusement Park was open, Yuan-ko even paid for advertisements on Huaxia City's TV stations to make its presence known. However, in the beginning, due to the fear of Yuan-ko, the number of tourists who entered Guanghui Amusement Park in the first year was less than 10,000. However, as the 10,000 people gave positive reviews, Guanghui Amusement Park's popularity gradually increased, and it finally developed into a large-scale amusement park that could accommodate tens of millions of people every year. When Gohan entered the amusement park, he found that it was indeed the case. The Guanghui Amusement Park, which was still a little shabby in the past, had now undergone a complete change. The entire area of the amusement park had expanded by more than 10 times. The Moon Lake, where a certain ship girl used to live, was also included in the scope of Guanghui Amusement Park. A set of water entertainment facilities had been built, and there were even cruise ships and yachts. It was very lively. At the same time, there were many modern and sci-fi entertainment facilities. At the same time, the entire amusement park was full of tourists. Such a huge amusement park actually gave people a feeling that it was full. However, if one observed carefully, one would find that the popular amusement facilities were almost all newly built in recent years. The Real Foundation of Guanghui Amusement Park, the old amusement park area located at the core of Guanghui Amusement Park, was particularly empty. Apart from 2 or 3 tourists who occasionally got lost and ended up here, Gohan could hardly see any customers along the way. There were not many Yuan-ko in the old amusement park. Occasionally, only 2 or 3 Yuan-ko would pass by in a hurry. They did not even look at Gohan. Even when they reached the former core of the amusement park, the huge castle, no one stopped Gohan, allowing Gohan to walk in. Chapter 1584. This is Thousand Do is Suzu's room. This is the room I used to live in. This is the room I used to eat with Black Tortoise. Gohan looked at the rooms in front of him in a daze. He could not help but recall the scenes from more than 50 years ago. He and Gu Xuanwu first came to this mysterious Radiance amusement park and then confirmed their identity as father and daughter. At the same time, he also thought that Gu Xuanwu was his and Artoria's daughter. Now that he saw these scenes, Gohan could not help but feel emotional. Time passed just like that. This should be Black Tortoise's room. Gohan walked to the end of the corridor and looked at a door that had obviously been sealed for a long time. At the same time, he stretched out his right hand and was ready to push the door open. "Who are you? This is not a place for tourists. Please go back immediately." Before Gohan could push the door open, he heard two very stern voices. He turned around and saw two girls in maid costumes, one red and one blue, staring at him with a serious and angry face. What's your name again?" Gohan remembered. Weren't these the maid sisters from the Radiance amusement park? He did not expect to meet old friends here. "No matter how you know my name, please leave this place immediately. Otherwise, I will call security," the pair of sisters said very sternly. "Whatever, you can go call security," Gohan said faintly, and at the same time, he did not hesitate to open the door of Gu Xuanwu's room. "Stop! This is the ladies' room. You have no right to enter." The pair of maid sisters moved at the same time, condensing a black magic ball in their hands and throwing it directly at Gohan's body. But what made the pair of sisters extremely surprised was that the two black magic balls had clearly smashed into Gohan's body. But for some reason, the moment they came into contact with his body, they completely melted away, not leaving any fluctuations or ripples, as if they did not exist at all. "You two, have you forgotten the contract that humans signed with you? You are not allowed to use any means to harm humans in the Radiance amusement park, or you too will be in court." Looking at the sisters, Gohan blinked and said slightly threateningly, "Humph, if you want to argue with us about the law, then fine. According to the new contract we signed with the Huaxia city government 8 years ago, the Guangwei Amusement Park's core castle is jointly owned by us and the Gu family. Everything here is protected by the human Gu family. Your act of destroying the Gu family's private property is not restricted by the law. You will be punished according to the Gu family's rules." The two maids frowned and said, "The two of us are the Gu family's stewards here. We have a right to enforce the Gu family's rules and have the final say. Do you understand?" F***CK. That bunch of bastards, before we left, we repeatedly warned them not to get any privileges. But in the end, that bunch of bastards still did it. When Gohan heard the words of the two maidservants, he immediately cursed loudly. His children had really overturned the heavens. They actually dared to come up with something like family rules being greater than the country's laws. His family was probably going to become a terrifying monster in the future. "Forget it. I'll deal with those bastards in the future." Gohan shook his head helplessly and directly walked into the Gu Black Tortoise's room. When the two maidservants saw Gohan enter, they knew that their threat just now had no effect. They could only helplessly chase after him. Then they saw Gohan carefully looking around the room. "Why is there so much dust? Have you never cleaned it before?" Gohan casually wiped his finger on the table, and as a result, 5 centimeters of dust was scraped off. From this, it could be seen that after he left the Guanghui amusement park, this room had probably not been cleaned by anyone. It's not that we don't want to clean it. It's just that the young mistress specifically told us not to clean it, the two maidservants said in a wronged manner. However, as soon as the words left their mouths, they realized that something was wrong. Why did I say the truth so easily? Why did I answer this man's question? "Your young mistress's order? What did your young mistress say?" Gohan asked curiously. Young mistress told us that after she left, absolutely no one is allowed to enter this room, not even her heartless father. The maidservants replied, but as soon as the words left their mouths, they became a little scared. Their answer was different from the last time. This time, they were prepared to absolutely not answer, but when the man asked the question, they still couldn't help but say the answer. What exactly happened? It was as if their bodies no longer belonged to them. "With just the two of you, can you stop her father?" Gohan said disdainfully. "Of course, we can't stop that heartless guy. After all, he is already Jindy." But the young mistress said that if her father dared to force his way in, We should tell that heartless thing. She doesn't want that heartless thing to see her things. She doesn't want him to continue to be sad. She hopes that he can forget himself. This is the last wish of the young mistress. She hopes that he can respect the young mistress. The two sisters replied, "She really doesn't like her father that much?" Guhan smiled bitterly, and then his body shook unconsciously. His expression instantly became extremely strange. Finally, with a twisted expression, he asked the two sisters, "When did your young mistress tell you this?" "On the night when our young mistress disappeared." The two sisters looked at Gahan with some inexplicable confusion. It was that heartless thing that released that Gilgamesh, causing the young mistress to disappear that night. "I see. Your young mistress is really amazing. On the night when she disappeared, she actually knew that she was destined to disappear. She even left such a resolute last word to her father," Guhan said as he gently stroked the table beside his hand. The two maidservants also reacted instantly. Right? They didn't think about it at first, but after hearing what Gahan said, they realized that something was wrong. They heard that the young mistress's disappearance was an unexpected accident, but at that time, the young mistress said it with certainty, as if she would definitely disappear. Could it be that the young mistress already knew that she was destined to disappear? Is there anything special in this room? Or is there any mechanism in this room? Gahan suddenly asked the two sisters. "I don't think so. The young mistress's room is the same as the other rooms. There shouldn't be any special mechanism." The two maidservants themselves answered somewhat blankly. "Is that so?" Guhan's sharp gaze swept across, and then a flash of light instantly flashed in his eyes. Both of his hands grabbed forward, and the princess bed in the room was grabbed by Gahan and then carefully placed in another place in the room. At this moment, under the princess bed, the spotless bottom of the bed appeared in the eyes of the three people. How can the bottom of a bed that no one has entered for decades be so clean? Gahan murmured, "It seems that my guess is right. This is the place." Chapter 1585. Are you sure you didn't guess wrong? The twin maids were about to ask, but in the next second, they felt a chill in their heads. Then, they became dizzy and fainted in the blink of an eye. Then, they were thrown out of the castle by Guhan. The next second, Guhan threw a sword aura at the position under the bed. The fragile wooden board was instantly dismembered by the sword aura, revealing a dark hole in front of Gahan. "I'm coming." Just as Gahan was about to step into the hole, he thought about it and retracted his foot. At the same time, he walked to the castle's balcony and overlooked the entire Radiance amusement park from the balcony. Looking at the crowded scene, he could not help but feel a little worried. The next second, Guhan disappeared from the room and appeared in a rather luxuriously decorated office with a huge fortune cat. "Who are you?" "This is the general manager's office. You're not allowed to enter without my permission. Get out." The boss-like guy in the office suddenly saw a human with disheveled hair and a dirty face appear in the office. He immediately said angrily and was about to call the security guards. "Troublesome." A flash of light flashed in Gahan's eyes. This boss-like guy was directly thrown into the void by Gahan, and Guhan swaggered to his office chair. Fortunately, there's a set of computers with medium authority here. Otherwise, it would be difficult for me to do this. Gahan looked at the computer in the office and nodded slightly. Then, he quickly typed on the keyboard and entered a series of extremely complicated symbols. A cute girl's head instantly filled the entire computer screen. "Who is it? Why did you suddenly drag me here? Is there any law? Is there any justice? Is there any protection for intelligent life?" After the girl's head appeared, she immediately muttered in dissatisfaction. "Gina, it's me," Guhan said faintly, and the girl in the computer was instantly shocked. She shouted, "Gahan, you are here? If it's not me, who else could it be?" Gahan knocked on the table. "Other than me, who else has this string of passwords and can drag you here by force? Maybe you gave it to your wife." Tamono Kakazi muttered. "That's right, this was the core of the previous highest level AI, Tamono Kakazi. However, following the huge change in Jinyan Online, Tamono Kakazi suffered great damage. Later, the remaining fragments were forcibly taken away by Xian. She then disappeared for more than 20 years until Gohan reappeared. Xian only reappeared a few years later with the resurrected Tamono Kakashi. Obviously, the time Xian disappeared was used to resurrect this unlucky Tamono Kakashi. However, Gohan obviously wouldn't allow this kind of situation where the highest level AI controlled all human lives. Tamono Kakashi also couldn't return to the time where she could instantly control all electronic AI devices. Under Xian and Gohan's discussion, Tamono Kakashi became a life form that could move freely in all networks, or rather, a human living on the network. She had the authority to enter and exit networks that didn't involve major human security devices. She had truly obtained her own freedom. It was said that Xian was preparing to create a body that belonged solely to Tamono Kakashi. This would allow Tamono Kakashi's consciousness to enter the body and become a true human. If that was the case, Tamono Kakashi would obviously be happier. However, Xian hadn't succeeded yet. So, Tamono Kakashi was still living on the network. However, Tamono Kakashi's traces were quite elusive. Unless it was someone like Gohan who had an unusual relationship with Tamono Kakashi, he wouldn't even be able to see the corner of Tamono Kakashi's clothes. Gohan, I heard that you disappeared for more than 10 years this time. You had to deal with that Tongtian sect leader. Now that you suddenly appeared, did you defeat Tongtian? Humanity is completely safe now. Tamono Kakashi said happily when she saw Gohan appear. No. Gohan shook his head and said calmly, in fact, I just found Tongtian's hiding place. Really? As it turns out, you've been looking for someone for the past 10 years, causing me to rejoice for nothing. Hearing that Gohan did not defeat sect leader Tongtian, Fragrant Breeze, Tamono's expression changed. Her fate was now completely tied to the human race. If Gohan could not defeat the Tongtian sect leader, she and the human race would probably perish together. All right, you will know the results soon. Now, do me a favor. Enter the management system here and drive all the tourists out. Gohan said, damn, could the Grand Master of Heaven be hiding in this dimensional rift? Tamono Kakashi was shocked by Gohan's words. She looked around nervously and said, if he's really here, these humans must be evacuated. But Gohan, you might have forgotten that I'm no longer the highest level AI, Tamono Kakashi. This Guangwei amusement park is protected by intermediate authority. I can't get in. Try licking your thumb. Gohan said suddenly. What? Tamono Kakashi looked at Gohan in confusion. Then she stuck out her thumb, put it in her mouth, and licked it. She said inexplicably, what's wrong? Nothing happened. You're wrong. I'm talking about my toes. Gohan said, damn, you pervert. How dare you ask me to lick my toes? I won't do it. Tamono Kakashi blushed when she heard that. She looked like a cute peach. Licking my own toes was too shameful. If you want to continue living such a free and comfortable life, then listen to me. Just lick it. Gohan's words made Tamono Kakashi confused. After hesitating for a long time, she held up her foot obediently and curled it into a ball like a furry dough. Then, she closed her eyes and stuck out her pink tongue to lick the sole of her foot. Then, a light that was not very bright, but was very conspicuous, instantly lit up between Tamono Kakashi's eyebrows. This is my previous power. The moment the light lit up, Tamono Kakashi instantly understood a lot of things. For example, she could freely shuttle through all the locations and areas of the network like before and control all the electronic devices connected to the network. But the difference was that Tamono Kakashi had many restrictions on her body in order to prevent her from attacking humans in the end. But now, Tamono Kakashi had no restrictions on her body. If she wanted to, she could even destroy all the electronic devices of the entire human race in an instant. She did not need to worry about any punishment, because no one could punish her. Chapter 1586. Attention all visitors. Attention all dear visitors. Due to unknown reasons, the spatial stability of the dimensional gap is fluctuating. The dimensional gap is in danger of collapsing at any time. All visitors, please leave the amusement park immediately. All visitors, please leave the amusement park immediately and return to the real world in an orderly manner under the command of the staff. This announcement was constantly repeated in the Radiance amusement park. When the humans heard it, they immediately rushed to the entrance in panic, afraid that if they were one step slower, they would be swallowed by the collapsing dimensional gap. Of course, it was not that none of the sword bearers expressed their doubts. They found that the entire dimensional gap did not seem to be fluctuating at all. This was especially so for one of the immortal level sword bearers, who had the ability to sense dimensional energy. He felt that the Radiance amusement park was currently more stable than ever. I'll go look for the manager here to see if there are any other problems. This immortal level sword bearer was rather responsible and prepared to look for the manager. However, in the next second, the entire Radiance amusement park began to shake. Countless rainbow-colored fluctuations that were visible to the naked eye flashed across the sky of the Radiance amusement park. More than a dozen cracks that looked like the seams of an egg also appeared in the sky of the dimensional gap, and some colorful smoke surged in from those cracks. It's spatial energy. It's dimensional space energy. This dimensional gap is really about to collapse. This time, the immortal level sword bearer no longer had any doubts. He did not intend to look for the manager either. He immediately revealed his identity as an immortal level sword bearer and began to control and guide the evacuation of the humans in the amusement park. After seeing this astonishing fluctuation, the Yuan Ko were even more anxious. They simply could not understand why the human management agency in charge of the Radiance amusement park would suddenly announce that the dimensional gap was unstable. They had lived here for nearly 1,000 years, but they had never seen any instability in the dimensional gap. Moreover, unlike humans who could walk away at will, the Yuan Ko were restricted by human law. They could only stay in the dimensional gap and could not leave. If there was really a problem with the dimensional gap, wouldn't it mean that they could only wait for death here? Hey, what should we do? Are we going to stay here and wait for death too? The Yuan Ko immediately found the immortal level sword bearer responsible for the evacuation. Sorry, according to the rules, without the approval of the Human Supreme Council, you are not allowed to leave this place. The immortal sword tier, sword wielder, shook his head and said firmly. Although he felt pity for these Yuan Ko, even though these Yuan Ko had lived peacefully with humans for many years. However, the outside world was the human world, the place where all humans lived. Once these Yuan Kos went out, what if they became vicious and killed humans? Therefore, for the sake of humanity, this immortal sword wielder ultimately rejected the offer forcefully. Then let's fight our way out. Hearing this, Yuan Ko and the others did not waste any time and began to gather together, preparing to forcefully attack their way out. Enough! Even if all of you work together, you're still no match for me. Furthermore, there's an army of 1,000 people outside. You can't force your way out, said the immortal sword wielder nonchalantly when he saw the Yuan Ko group up. Meanwhile, the Yuan Ko's group revealed expressions of despair. Could it be that they could only wait for death in the dimensional gap? Stop! Look at what this is. At this moment, a pair of maidservants suddenly rushed over. At the same time, everyone could see that this pair of maidservants was holding a long sword with mountains and rivers carved all over it. Xian Yuan's sword. The immortal sword wielder recognized the sword's origin the moment he saw it. There was no other way. The origin of this sword was too shocking, and he could not help but recognize it. That Gohan of yours wants you to let us out. You are not to stop us. The twin maidservants raised the Xian Yuan sword in their hands. However, even though the Xian Yuan sword was in their hands, this immortal sword wielder was still a little hesitant. Who knew if the other party was lying? They're my daughter's family. There's no need to wait for death here. Temporarily arrange for them to live in the dimensional gap and watch over them. We'll talk about it when I return. A voice suddenly exploded in the immortal sword wielder's ears. He was so frightened that he knelt down and kowtowed to the sword respectfully. Then, he said with utmost respect. "This junior greets your majesty. This junior obeys your majesty. Long live your majesty. You're not bad. You know how to abide by the laws of humans at critical times. This is a good thing. I will remember your contribution." Guhan praised him one last time before controlling the Xian Yuan sword to fly back into the void. "Thank you, your majesty. This junior obeys." With Guhan's praise, this immortal sword wielder immediately shouted in joy. He did not insist anymore and quickly arranged for the army to take the Yuan Ko's away. This fellow still has a conscience. The maidservants in the crowd snorted and followed the crowd out of the Radiance amusement park. As the last batch of Yuan Ko's left, the dimensional gap was empty except for Gahan, who was in the manager's office. "Oomph. When did you set up this trap on me? To actually make it so shameful. It's too shameful." Tamono Sasuke's recalled his lewd appearance just now, and his face was filled with shame and resentment. "I didn't set it up. It was your Xian. He said I might use this function of yours sooner or later. I didn't expect it to come in handy now." Guhan smiled faintly, then said, "I'm going to seal off this place soon, and at the same time, all the internet will be cut off. You should leave as well." Guhan glanced at Tamono Kakashi and said, "You letting me go just like that?" Tamono Kakashi looked at Gahan doubtfully. "Aren't you going to take back the authority you just gave me?" "No need. I believe you won't do anything bad to humans. After all, we are friends. This can also be considered as my final gift to you," Guhan said with a smile. "Damn, what last gift? Don't think you can get rid of me with just one gift. You still have to buy me many, many gifts in the future." Tamono Kakashi suddenly felt her eyes were a little sore. She immediately turned around and slipped out of the computer screen. She already felt that Gahan might not come back. This might be the last chance for her to see Gahan. Actually, Gahan has many ways to make people leave. There's no need for me to control the computer. Could it be that Gahan just wants to see me for the last time and say goodbye to me? This thought suddenly flashed in Tamono Kakashi's mind. Her feelings for Gahan suddenly surged out like a tide. Just as she was about to go back and have a good talk with Gahan, she realized that the network of the dimensional rift had been completely blocked. This was a physical blockade, and Tamono Kakashi could not enter. This little fool. If I get out alive, will she still have a chance to harm the human world? And if I can't get out alive, will the human world continue to exist peacefully? Just live the rest of your days happily and wait for the future that I don't know. Gohan let out a long sigh and disappeared from the manager's office. He returned to the Black Tortoise's room and walked into the pitch-black passage without looking back. On July 2nd, 3058 AD, the gate of the dimensional rift of the Radiance amusement park, which was famous throughout Huaxia City and was also the only place in Huaxia City that could coexist peacefully with Yuan Ko, experienced a dimensional collapse. The entire dimensional rift disappeared without a trace and never appeared again. Chapter 1587. This is, as Gahan walked down the secret passage in Gu Xuanwu's room, he finally landed in a secret room that was piled up with stones. At the same time, he discovered an open black hole in the middle of the secret room that was emitting black ripples. Is this the smell of the seamless corridor? As soon as Gohan saw this black hole, he smelled a familiar scent. That's right, this was the seamless corridor that had trapped Gahan for a long time, and this was the other entrance to the seamless corridor. It was also the entrance that I Chingping and Misaka Mikoto and the others used to enter the seamless corridor. It was right here, but wasn't the seamless corridor destroyed? How could this entrance still exist? The audience might have such questions in their hearts, but Gohan seemed to have already predicted the existence of the seamless corridor. Without any hesitation, Gohan once again jumped into the entrance of the endless corridor. After more than 30 years, Gohan finally stepped into the seamless corridor once more. And when Gohan arrived at the seamless corridor, he discovered that it seemed to be the same as before. Space-time was still inverted, and there was no sense of time and place, and there were still people who were confused and unable to leave this place. But the current Frigid Han was no longer the Frigid Han of 30 years ago. 30 years ago, The frigid Han was only able to allow the space-time here to do whatever it wanted to him. But the current frigid Han was able to control the entire seamless corridor. Since the things that were sealed no longer exist, let's return to normal. Guhan snapped his fingers in the seamless corridor, and the entire seamless corridor suddenly trembled. This tremor was extremely small, so small that most of the sealed beings in the seamless corridor did not even notice the existence of this tremor. An hour later, just as they were preparing to face yet another space-time distortion, they discovered, to their astonishment, that the seamless corridor was still in its original state. The chaotic space-time distortions had disappeared, and time no longer had to follow the hourly cycle. Instead, it was like a normal river, quietly flowing forward. And the culprit who caused all of this was naturally our comrade Guhan. At this moment, Guhan was leisurely walking along the corridor. He walked along this endless corridor without stopping for even a moment. Along the way, they met many panic-stricken Yuan Ko. Guhan had seen some of these Yuan Ko before, such as Senior Hong Chigo. There were also some that Guhan had never met before. However, these people in Yuan Ko didn't stop Guhan's footsteps. He kept moving forward without stopping. The others didn't even notice Guhan's existence. It was as if Guhan didn't exist in their eyes. At a certain moment, Guhan suddenly came to a halt and looked at a person who appeared before him. "Hello, where's this place? Why am I here all of a sudden?" The person also saw Guhan and immediately ran over excitedly, asking Guhan anxiously and puzzledly. This is the seamless corridor, a place where space and time are in disorder. Guhan had a faint smile on his face as he explained the original rules of the seamless corridor to the person. "Thank you. So this is such a place. It seems that I, Mingyuan, won't be able to get out this time." After listening to Guhan's explanation, the woman first thanked Guhan, then said helplessly, in her opinion, she probably didn't have the ability to leave this strange place. "It's okay. You won't stay here for too long. You'll be able to get out soon. I can promise you that." Guhan shook his head. "Is that so? Then thank you for your auspicious words." Mingyuan Jindy obviously took Guhan's words as comforting words, so she gave a perfunctory thank you. "No need to thank me. I should be the one thanking you." Guhan took a deep look at Mingyuan Jindy, and his mouth moved slightly, as if he wanted to remind Mingyuan Jindy not to touch any black crystal stone. But in the end, Guhan swallowed the words back into his mouth. "Thank me for what? I didn't do anything good for you." Mingyuan Jindy asked in surprise. "Nothing much. I just know that after seeing you, I've pretty much reached the end of my path." Guhan smiled. However, the Ming Iris Sword Emperor was confused by Guhan's words. Just as Mingyuan Jindy was about to ask for clarification, Guhan had already disappeared in front of Mingyuan Jindy. Damn, time and space had been transformed. Seeing Guhan disappear, Mingyuan Jindy thought that the time and space transformation that Guhan mentioned had happened. After cursing, she aimlessly set off on the road ahead. But just as Guhan said, when Guhan saw Mingyuan Jindy, this road was almost at the end. After more than 20 minutes, the seamless corridor, which was originally shrouded in nothingness, suddenly appeared a somewhat faint halo of light. And as Guhan continued to step forward, the halo of this halo of light became bigger and bigger, finally forming a rather spectacular door, and this door was open without any scruples, showing the world full of light behind the door. It seemed that this world of the seamless corridor was actually a world with an end, but no one had the ability to reach this end. "I'm coming," Guhan said lightly, and then stepped into the door without hesitation. Crash! The world in front of Guhan instantly changed. The originally dark, terrifying, suffocating, and despairing world of the seamless corridor had completely disappeared. In its place was a beautiful world with birdsong and fragrant flowers, with a blue sky, emerald green trees, colorful flowers, crisp and melodious birdsong, and a magnificent waterfall. Flower Fruit Mountain. At the same time, Guhan also noticed that on a boulder at the entrance, the words Flower Fruit Mountain were written in rather neat calligraphy. Could it be that this was the legendary birthplace of the Monkey King, Sun Wukong? The legendary flower fruit mountain that existed only in legends? Since I'm here, your destiny can also end. When Gohan saw the words flower fruit mountain, his body involuntarily trembled. Then, he turned his body and pointed his finger at the seamless corridor behind him. The seamless corridor, which had originally returned to normal, instantly shattered into pieces like broken glass. In the blink of an eye, it completely disintegrated, and finally, an endless dimensional space appeared outside the door. The seamless corridor, this huge corridor that had appeared since the beginning of the apocalypse, had been used to seal Grandmaster Tong Tian. In the end, it had actually been destroyed by Gohan's own hands. This was probably something that Gohan had never imagined when he first left the seamless corridor. But Gohan had no choice. He had to destroy this corridor. Chapter 1588. Following the rugged mountain path all the way up, there were lush trees on both sides of the road. Among them, there was no lack of pink cherry blossom trees. Cherry blossoms fell from the trees one by one and finally fell on Gohan's shoulders, displaying an exceptional beauty. There were also golden monkeys swinging on the branches, chirping at Gohan. Some of them even slapped Gohan's buttocks. If it were not for the fact that Gohan looked very imposing and not easy to bully, the monkeys would have probably ridden on Gohan's head to cause trouble. Apart from that, butterflies that couldn't be named but looked bright and beautiful began to dance around Gohan. A pure white hare quietly peeked out from the forest with a pair of red eyes, looking at Gohan, this human who suddenly appeared in this world, with some fear. Finally, there was a swarm of wild bees flying around, also staring at this uninvited guest with vigilance. Although the atmosphere in the forest didn't seem friendly, there was no doubt that this was a beautiful place. The Flower Fruit Mountain was a beautiful place. If this place was really without an owner, then Gohan would be very happy to build his family in this beautiful place that made people feel relaxed and happy. Unfortunately, the mountain already had an owner. When Gohan reached the mountainside, he saw a wooden house made of pure wood. It was located on a flat piece of land on the mountainside. The house was not big, but it was not small either. It had a courtyard with 3 entrances and 2 exits, and there were 8 houses arranged in an orderly manner. Upon closer inspection, the houses were actually arranged according to the position of the 8 trigrams formation. It was obviously a house built by an extraordinary person. From the outside, the house looked a little deserted. The only sign of life was a big yellow cow tied to a pin outside the house. It was nibbling on the grass in the stone trough happily, snorting loudly from time to time. On the door of the house, there were no couplets pasted on it like traditional houses. However, there was a large banner pasted on the lintel of the door. It read, "Fleeting time and dogs are not allowed in." This fleeting time should be from the Leonian family. Could it be that the Leonian family had come to this mountain of flowers and fruits and interacted with the owner of this house? Although Gohan had a close relationship with the Leonian family, Gohan's surname was not Leonian. So, Gohan pushed open the door and walked into the house. Just like the elegant scene outside, the interior of the house was decorated in a classical Chinese style. There were all kinds of simple furniture made of wood. There were no signs of modernization. It was as if this was just an ancient Chinese farm. The only difference was that there were no farming tools in the house. This was obviously impossible for a farmer, but it also meant that the owner of the house was not a real farmer, but a hermit. At this moment, a melodious humming sound suddenly came from the innermost room. This sound was so familiar that the moment Gohan heard it, his entire body could not help but soften. His legs seemed to be unable to support his own strength, and he slammed heavily into the wall behind him. Who is it? Who is shameless enough to appear in this old man's house? Is it those bastards from the Leonian family who have forgotten their ancestors? A cold, scolding sound came from the house, and then a figure appeared in front of Gohan like a gust of wind. He raised his hand and directly slapped Gohan's face. Well done. Although he had been slapped, Gohan did not show any anger. Instead, his face was full of shame as he spoke. This voice is... After hearing Guhan's voice, the person who slapped him instantly recognized him. Tears immediately filled her eyes. After seeing the appearance of the person, the woman was so excited that she felt dizzy. Just like Guhan, her body fell backward powerlessly. When she was about to fall to the ground, Guhan quickly caught her and held her in his arms. "Daddy, is that you? Daddy? Is Black Tortoise dreaming?" Black Tortoise actually saw Daddy. Gu Xuanwu spoke in a daze as she felt Guhan's warmth. Her eyes were completely obscured by her tears as she stared at Guhan's unkempt face. Even though Guhan's beard was unkempt, his face was dirty, and he was dressed like a vagabond. Mingyuan Jindi did not recognize Guhan's appearance when he met Guhan again in the future. It could be said that unless one was close to Guhan, one would not be able to recognize Guhan's appearance. At this moment, to be able to recognize Guhan's appearance with a single glance, and at the same time, to call out the word father in a daze, other than Guhan's missing biological daughter, Gu Xianwu, there was absolutely no one else. "Daddy, is it really you? Are you really my daddy?" Although she recognized Guhan, Gu Xuanwu still found it hard to believe as she asked over and over again. "That's right, it's Daddy, I am Guhan. Good daughter, Daddy has finally found you." Guhan could not help but cry. Turbid tears also filled Guhan's eyes. After so many years, Guhan finally saw his own daughter. "Daddy." Gu Xuanwu finally confirmed that the person in front of her was her own father. She finally let down all her guard and threw herself into Guhan's arms. She hugged Guhan and cried bitterly. Her cries were tragic, and the sadness contained within was so strong that all the animals in Flower and Fruit Mountain stopped moving at this moment. They silently lowered their heads and sobbed softly. The pain of missing her was so great that it reached this point. This pair of father and daughter, who had not seen each other for dozens of years, cried for an hour. Only when the tears of the two of them almost stopped did Gu Xuanwu shyly stand up from Guhan's arms. She began to busy herself inside and outside the house. Very quickly, she tidied up a room that had obviously not been used for a long time. She even brewed a pot of fragrant tea. After the two of them sat down, she filled Guhan's cup to the brim before respectfully raising it in front of Guhan and saying, "Lord Father above, daughter invites father to have tea." "Good, good, good." Guhan said the word "good" 3 times before receiving the cup of tea with trembling hands. After carefully tasting it, he drank the entire cup in one gulp and finally sighed, "Good tea. Daddy, how did you find this place?" Gu Xuanwu asked while wiping the tears from the corner of her eyes. "Daddy is about to fight the last evil thief. Whether I succeed or lose, everything is decided by the heavens. Father cannot force it. But before this battle, Father only has one wish, and that is to be able to see you once. But Father does not know where you are, so I can only go to your room to take a look. I didn't expect to find the entrance to the seamless corridor. Father has come to this seamless corridor once before. It is also a place filled with memories. It is also the place where you were born. So Father wanted to fulfill the wish that I could not fulfill the last time I came to the seamless corridor. I wanted to walk to the end of the seamless corridor and take a look, but I didn't expect that when I reached the end, I would actually see you," Guhan said with great emotion. Chapter 1589. Who is it? Who's here? Did a rat come in? Before Guhan could ask anything, he suddenly heard an incomparably old voice behind him. Then, the door of a room was slowly pushed open, and a figure entered. Her appearance once again shocked Guhan. "Artoria!" Guhan stood up from the chair. He never expected that after more than 30 years, Artoria would appear in front of him again. "Mom, why are you up? Didn't I tell you to continue resting?" Gu Xuanwu held Artoria in his arms, and at the same time pulled her in front of Guhan excitedly. "Mom, look who's here. Who's back? Who is this? Do we know each other? I don't know him." Unexpectedly, Artoria carefully looked at Guhan for a while, and finally shook her head inexplicably, indicating that she had never seen Guhan before, nor did she know who Guhan was. This caused Guhan to look as if he had lost his soul. Dad, it's not like that. Mom is sick. Her brain has suffered a very serious injury. It's like she has dementia. She just forgot about you. Seeing this scene, Gu Xuanwu could only helplessly explain. At this time, Gahan also discovered that although Artoria's appearance and aura were exactly the same, it was indeed Artoria from back then. But her mental temperament was completely different. Her eyes were lifeless, and her facial muscles were loose. At the same time, her body would tremble uncontrollably. It was indeed the symptoms of dementia. It's good that she's not a rat. It's good that she's not a rat. Daughter, I'm tired. I'm going back to rest. Help me, Artoria said blankly. Gu Xuanwu made a helpless expression at Gahan, and then sent his mother out of the room. After a long time, he returned with a tired expression. I'm sorry, Father. I didn't take good care of Mom. It's all my fault. Seeing Gahan sitting there in a daze, Gu Xuanwu suddenly could not hold back his tears and began to wail unbridledly. What's going on? Can you tell Daddy everything from the beginning to the end, including why are you here? Why is your mother here? After a long sigh, Gahan said helplessly. Gu Xuanwu nodded his head and told Gahan everything that had happened over the years. Over 1,000 years ago, I was pushed into the gate of eternity by that enemy. Gu Xuanwu slowly said. It was 52 years ago. To be precise, it's 52 years, 3 months, and 2 days. Gu Xuanwu's words were interrupted by Gahan. I'm sorry. My time is a little messed up. So it's already past that day? So the gate of eternity has already been open for more than 50 years? Gu Xuanwu revealed a bitter expression before explaining once more. In 52 years, 3 months, and 2 days, after I was pushed into the door of eternity, I discovered that I had arrived on the day when the great calamity had just begun. I personally witnessed the scene of a large number of innocent humans being slaughtered wantonly by the Yuan bandits who had suddenly appeared. At that time, I worked hard to kill many Yuan Ko, but I was still too weak at that time. I only had the strength of a famed level sword wielder, and was unable to fight against so many Yuan Ko. In the end, I was severely injured and could only flee. Unknowingly, I escaped to the city of Wuhan and happened to see the words Honest Man's Supermarket, and also the scene of that enemy climbing out of the ruins. So I immediately unsheathed my sword, wanting to kill the culprit who caused me and Father to be separated. But that enemy was ultimately still Kinzu and wanted to kill him on the spot. In the end, the sword in his hand, which is Father's Qingpin sword, was suddenly released and fought with me. I was completely not his opponent and was defeated by him. All right, Qingpin sword, Qingpin sword. Speaking till here, Gu Xuanwu suddenly thought of something and immediately rushed to Gohan anxiously. Father, is that Qingpin sword still in your hands? You can't bring it along anymore. You have to throw it away immediately. She is Tong Tian sect leader's sword. She is a chess piece that Tong Tian sect leader used to plot against you and that enemy. Father, that sword is too dangerous. You have to destroy it immediately. If you don't have the heart to do it, then leave it to your daughter. Your daughter will never let this sword harm Father again. Gu Xuanwu said anxiously, and at the same time, her eyes wandered around Gahan's body, wanting to pull out that Qingping sword. No need. You are a step too late. That sword is already pierced into my heart. Gohan sighed and calmed down the anxious Gu Xuanwu and said with some grief, that sword is gone. Qingpin is gone. Qingping is also gone. All gone. Only a scrap of iron is left. Father. Gu Xuanwu looked at Gohan blankly. She seemed to have never seen Gohan so sad and had such a sorrowful expression. In her impression, her father had always been a man of indomitable spirit, a man who would not feel sad or sad for anything. Unexpectedly, at this moment, she saw this side of her father. It seemed that the Qingping sword was really completely destroyed. Father, you don't have to be sad. This is all fate. I was also tricked by that sword into this state. Gu Xuanwu sighed and continued to narrate her story. Now that I think about it, if I had been a bit more unyielding, I would have killed that enemy, and there wouldn't have been so many things afterwards. But as luck would have it, I actually walked together with him and even had feelings for him, got married, and even had a child that belonged to the two of us. Speaking to this point, Gu Xuanwu's expression suddenly became a bit shy and looked at Gahan with some fear. Father, this daughter did not get your consent, even if I gave myself to someone else. Father, you won't be angry with this daughter, right? Why are you mentioning this? Gohan smiled bitterly. If you want my consent, then wouldn't you have to wait for another 1,000 years? How could I let you suffer like this? Moreover, love is a matter between two people. As a parent, I can give my opinion, but I will not stop the two of you from loving each other. Since the two of you walk together because of love, then be together. It's just that fleeting calendar became my master for a period of time. Now that I think about it, letting my son-in-law become my master, isn't this a bit too embarrassing? Humph. This bastard, he actually has the face to become his father-in-law's master. Hearing Gahan say this, Gu Xuanwu immediately frowned, but the love between her brows for fleeting calendar could not be concealed no matter what. Chapter 1590. After this small incident, Gu Xuanwu continued to narrate his story. Gu Xuanwu continued. Later, as Yinjing City began to break ground, I realized that the fleeting calendar started to become very strange. He would often disappear in front of me and do some things behind my back. He would also always ask about a place called the Seamless Corridor. It was as if this place was extremely important to him. Later, I remembered that this Seamless Corridor was the place that Father always talked about, the place where Mother disappeared and was controlled by the Martyr's Palace. Thinking of these things, I instinctively became very curious about this Seamless Corridor. At that time, after countless battles with Yuan Ko, I had already grown to the level of an Emperor sword wielder. I was very confident in my own strength and felt that the world was big enough for me to go to. At that time, the Martyr's Palace hadn't been built yet, and the Seamless Corridor was still an ownerless place in the dimensional space. Thus, after a long period of preparation, I was prepared to go to the Seamless Corridor and see what kind of thing it was and what kind of secrets it was hiding. But I shouldn't have told my enemy about this the day before I left. Originally, when I realized that he was also asking about the Seamless Corridor, I didn't plan on telling him about it. I only told him that I was going to travel for a period of time. But when he heard that I was going to travel, he brought out a table full of good wine and said that he was going to send me off. At that time, our relationship as a married couple was at its strongest, so I didn't feel that anything was wrong, so I accompanied him to drink for the whole night. After drinking too much, he kept asking me about my true purpose in going out. I couldn't help but tell him that I was going to the Seamless Corridor because I had bought two of my best friends. After that, I fell into a deep sleep. When I woke up, I found myself lying in the wilderness, surrounded by trees and Yuan Ko. What was even more frightening was that all of my sword maidens had disappeared, not even an ancient sword. I immediately realized that I had been plotted against by the person closest to me. But perhaps he couldn't bear to kill me himself, so he took away all of my sword maidens and wanted Yuan Ko to kill me. Near the place where I fell asleep was the land of a Hong, level Yuan Ko. Without the sword maidens, I definitely wasn't a match for this Hong, level Yuan Ko. At that time, I was still pregnant with his flesh and blood, yet he still wanted to kill me. In the end, that Hong level Yuan Ko naturally discovered my existence and attacked me without hesitation. Without the sword maidens, when I was about to die in the hands of that Yuan Ko, my sworn brother, or rather, one of the ancestors of the human race, Qin Shi Huang Ingzheng, happened to appear. But at that time, Ingzheng only had the battle prowess of a sword immortal. The two of us had to join forces to barely escape from the hands of that flood-level bandit, and I was severely injured. If it weren't for the medical pods in my dimensional pocket that I brought over from the future, I would have definitely died at the hands of that flood-level bandit. After recovering, in order to still have a certain amount of combat power, I found an ordinary natural sword maiden. Although I couldn't synchronize them, at least I could use the sword essence, which could barely be considered as the power of an immortal sword. After that, I tried my best to figure out one thing. I wanted to figure out why the person I once loved wanted to kill me. So I pretended that I was already dead and secretly investigated the truth behind the matter while I was pregnant. That was really an unforgettable period of time. Father, you don't know how bitter and sad I was at that time. I even wanted to pierce my belly with a sword and die together with that bastard's son. But in the end, I still endured it, gave birth to the child, and then took the child with me to search. Finally, my hard work paid off. I met some UNCO who did not take the initiative to attack human beings. I found that the reason why they did not take the initiative to attack human beings was that they did not have a weird existence similar to a spiritual fragment in their bodies. Therefore, I realized that this was the prototype of the filth that Father mentioned. It was actually a spiritual fragment. So I realized that the root cause of the change in my lover was this filth. So I spent the next years desperately studying this filth, and even studied how to remove the filth from the body of an ordinary Yuan Ko, but I still couldn't find the filth. In the end, I decided to take a risk and send a piece of filth into my own soul, and use my own soul to analyze the memories contained in this spiritual fragment, hoping to find out the origin of the original owner of the filth through this method. It was a huge risk. Even a small piece of spiritual fragment contained a shockingly powerful soul power. It almost devoured my entire soul. But in the end, I succeeded in absorbing this piece of filth and read all the memories contained in it. Only then did I know the truth about the Great Apocalypse. It turned out that it was sect leader Tontian and a group of sages who were behind it. The battle of these sages not only destroyed their world, but also destroyed the barrier between dimensions, allowing creatures from different dimensions to enter the main world. After the spiritual fragment of sect leader Tongtian's shattered spiritual consciousness entered the bodies of these Yuan Ko, becoming the source of filth that polluted them. This is the origin of everything. When telling the truth, Gu Xuanwu told Gohan in a tone as if he was presenting a treasure. However, to Gu Xuanwu's disappointment, Gohan's indifferent expression told him that Gohan actually already knew the truth of the matter. He also knew about the existence of sect leader Tongtian. That's right. Now that Father knows the origin of the Qingping sword and has been hurt by it, he should know more or less about sect leader Tongtian. Gu Xuanwu smiled bitterly and gave up on presenting a treasure. Then he continued, so I began to desperately search for information about sect leader Tongtian, and even saved some Yuan Ko of the Heavenly Court. I dug out a lot of secrets from their mouths, and finally pieced together the truth of the matter. I also learned that the sword in the enemy's hand was sect leader Tongtian's most intimate and favorite sword, the Qingping sword. Chapter 1591. At this time, I finally understood why that enemy treated me like this. It was because he had been bewitched by the Qingping sword and lost his own conscience. He became a tool for the Qingping sword to resurrect the sect leader of Tongtian. After knowing the cause and effect, I felt that I couldn't let things continue like this. I had to stop the Qingping sword's actions. Thus, I brought my child back and confronted that enemy again. At the same time, I hoped that I could use this opportunity to break the Qingping sword. At the same time, I hoped that my enemy could use this opportunity to regain his consciousness. Gu Xuanwu's voice suddenly became a little more excited as he spoke. What happened in the end? Gohan also asked very nervously. What else could the result be? Daughter overestimated her own strength. That enemy had already been controlled by the Qingping sword to an extremely deep degree. He actually wanted to personally kill Daughter and even stabbed the Qingping sword into Daughter's chest. Just as Daughter was about to die at the hands of that enemy, who would have thought that my child would save my life? He called out, "Father," and woke that enemy up from his daze. Only then did he hurriedly retract his sword and save my life. Gu Xuanwu sighed and said, however, after that enemy woke up, he told me that he was only temporarily free from the shackles of the Qingping sword. He could be trapped by the Qingping sword again at any time. Thus, he told me to recuperate at home while he went to find a place to seal the Qingping sword. At that time, I was severely injured and couldn't stop him at all. I could only watch him leave with Qingping. After about 10 days, that enemy returned empty-handed. The Qingping sword was indeed sealed by him. Later, I remembered that he should have sealed the Qingping sword in Yuzhong City at that time. In the end, who knew how many years later, it became the opportunity for my father to meet the Qingping sword. However, I never expected that after the seal came back, I didn't know if that enemy had fallen for the Qingping sword's plot or if his mind had been controlled again. After he came back, he threw his severely injured daughter out and used the lives of his daughter and child to force his daughter to never return to the human world. She had to hide forever and never come into contact with humans again. At the same time, he began to frantically destroy all traces and memories of his daughter's existence in that world, even going as far as to activate the cultural apocalypse to completely erase all traces of his daughter. Never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that the great cultural destruction that Father often talks about, the descendants of the future sigh with regret, and the human race almost losing all of their culture and history, was actually caused by me. If only I had listened to Father and stayed in the castle obediently instead of coming to this underground world. Then, I wouldn't have so many terrible memories that I don't want to recall. This bastard, he actually dared to do this to my daughter. I will definitely destroy all of his sword souls, so that not a single trace of him will be left in this world. When Gahan heard his daughter's narration, he angrily slammed the table and said, "Not only that, he even brainwashed my child who isn't even 3 years old, making that child believe that his mother is a bad person whose existence must be erased. Your daughter really hates him to death. I can't wait to kill him with my own hands, but your daughter can't do it. Your daughter really can't do it." Gu Xuanwu suddenly threw himself into Gahan's arms and wailed. He wantonly poured out his sorrowful tears in his father's arms. These were tears that had condensed over thousands of years. After comforting Gu Xuanwu for a while, when Gu Xuanwu's emotions had calmed down, Gahan continued to ask, "Then what happened? How did you run to the end of this seamless corridor?" Then, Gu Xuanwu smiled bitterly. "I won't hide it from Father. Afterwards, your daughter felt disheartened and wanted to take the initiative to seek death. So I found my sworn brother Ing Zheng and wanted to borrow his coffin to bury myself alive. However, I never expected that after staying in his coffin for 2 years without eating or drinking, I would still be alive and kicking. There was no sign of death at all. It was only at that time that I discovered that not only did I not die, I didn't even have a trace of aging. For the first time, I also felt that I might not die in this lifetime. So for the next few decades, I lived in seclusion at the top of Kunlun Mountain. If I met humans, I would knock them unconscious and send them out. If I met Yuan Ko, I would directly kill them. Later, I even left my lifetime's comprehension on a rock at the top of the mountain. At that time, those humans who were knocked unconscious and sent out by me thought that I was a Yuan Ko called the Nine Heavens Mysterious Fairy. So your daughter decided to make the best of the mistake, and in the name of the Nine Heavens Mysterious Fairy, I left the Nine Heavens Mysterious Fairy Sword technique on a rock. Hearing this, Gahan couldn't help but sigh. The Empyrean Maiden of the Nine Heavens Sword technique was actually created by his own daughter. One must know that in order to nurture his disciple Lu Shihua, Guhan had once planned to obtain the Empyrean Maiden of the Nine Heavens Sword technique that was more suitable for Lu Shihua to cultivate. Who would have thought that in the end, it was actually created by his own daughter? What was going on? I lived on Kunlun Mountain for more than 100 years and discovered that I really wouldn't die, nor would I show any signs of aging. But the days were getting more and more irritable. In the end, I couldn't resist the restlessness in my heart and decided to travel outside to relieve my boredom. Along the way, your daughter met many people and also encountered many things. Later, when I remembered the matter of Wu-Tang Mountain that Father mentioned, I wanted to go there to take a look. I didn't expect to encounter that mystic dragon that was about to destroy Wu-Tang Mountain. I killed that mystic dragon along the way, and I also saved a woman who was clearly just a famed sword rank swordsman, but dared to fight the mystic dragon to the death, and in the end was burned to ashes by him. Father, can you guess who that woman was? At this point, Gu Xuanwu suddenly revealed a playful little girl's attitude. She obediently blinked her eyes and looked at her father as she asked this question coquettishly. It can't be Jitian Jindi, right? Guhan's hand suddenly trembled, and he said in an extremely strange tone, "Wow, father, you guessed it so accurately. It really was His Majesty Jitian Jindi," Gu Xuanwu said excitedly. At that time, Jitian Jindi was as weak as a seedling. She didn't know anything, and she was always curious about everything. Even her swordsmanship was terrible. It was only after I taught her the basic swordsmanship that she gradually became powerful. The three most powerful Emperor sword rank swordsmen in human history were my father, my husband, and my disciple. Just thinking about it makes me feel very interested. No, one was your father, one was your husband, and the last one was your mother, Guhan said with infinite emotion. However, this sentence could only be said in Guhan's heart. He didn't dare to tell his precious daughter, who was in a state of excitement. Otherwise, his precious daughter would probably break down. Chapter 1592. Back then, when you met I Ching. No, when you met Jitian Jindi. Tell me in detail. What exactly happened to Jitian Jindi? Is she really a woman? Guhan tried his best to sound calm as he asked. Guhan felt that this was the only way he could find out what happened to his wife, I Ching. Moreover, it was from her own daughter. I knew father was interested in Jitian Jindi. But father, how did you know that Jitian Jindi was a woman? I thought only my daughter knew this secret. Gu Xuanwu said excitedly. Don't forget, the sword in father's hand is the heavenly sword. It was the heavenly sword that told father all this. Guhan immediately put the blame on the heavenly sword. Before Gu Xuanwu left him, Guhan had never told Gu Xuanwu about Jitian Jindi. So Gu Xuanwu always thought that Guhan didn't know Jitian Jindi's true gender. Oh, so that's how it is. However, Sister I Ching doesn't have a good relationship with the heavenly sword. She forcefully kept the heavenly sword in its scabbard and didn't let her out. Moreover, she was trapped for months at a time. I reckon that the heavenly sword hates Sister I Ching a lot. Gu Xuanwu sighed, then slowly began to narrate. Actually, I don't know much about Sister I Ching because she was never willing to talk about herself. I could only piece together a rough story through some trivial chatter. There might be some big mistakes in it. So, father, please don't take everything seriously. After all, I don't know if Sister I Ching is telling the truth or not. Sister I Ching said that when she was about to become an adult, she had a serious illness. Although she was lucky enough to survive, her brain was damaged, so she forgot everything that happened more than 10 years ago. When she regained her memory, she was already an 18-year-old adult. She was born in the Zongzi tribe near Yuzhong City. Sister I Ching's father left the tribe when she was very young. It was said that he met a passing swordsman and found that her father was very talented, so he brought her back to Yinjing City for training. Speaking of which, this woman is actually the 6th-generation successor of the Lun Yin family, as well as my 7th-generation granddaughter and your 8th-generation granddaughter. This is simply too embarrassing. Later, it was said that Sister I Ching's father fell in love with my granddaughter. However, my granddaughter had a very serious illness and was diagnosed that she would never be able to bear a child. So, Sister I Ching's father thought of the daughter he had abandoned in the Zongzi tribe and brought Sister I Ching back to the Lun Yin clan, which is also my home. It's just that Sister I Ching's father is a demented demon. In order to hide the mistakes he made, as well as Sister I Ching's true identity and gender, he actually killed the entire Zongzi tribe on the night he took Sister I Ching away. You should know that the Zongzi tribe is passed down through blood relations. Everyone in the tribe is Sister I Ching's blood relative, but in the end, they were all killed without hesitation. Later on, this man even killed some Yuan Ko and stole a medicine that could rejuvenate a person's body. He also used some evil methods to change Sister I Ching's gender to a male. Then, he pretended to be a 5 or 6-year-old survivor that he picked up from the Zongzi tribe, intending to raise him as their adopted son. Father, your 8th-generation granddaughter, is just too innocent. She never thought that there would be so many conspiracies. She really raised sister I Ching as her adopted son. However, she's still your 7th-generation grandson. My 6th-generation grandson still has some brains. He sensed that this child's background is a little abnormal, so he refused to admit that this child is the successor of the Lunyan clan. He planned to work hard to give birth to a son so that you won't end your line. Gu Xuanwu spoke very quickly. He talked about the 8th generation's granddaughter one moment, then the 6th generation's grandson the next. This made Gu Han's scalp go numb. Although Gu Han already knew that the Lunyan family's people were his descendants, Gu Xuanwu's impression of Gu Xuanwu was still unbearable. After all, according to what Gu Xuanwu said, he had married his 27th-generation granddaughter and given birth to a son for him. At the same time, he was also his 28th-generation grandson. Even 100 orthopedic surgeons in Germany would not be able to correct this ethical relationship. Gu Xuanwu naturally did not sense his father's schemes. He continued to narrate the stories of others excitedly. However, my 6th-generation grandson was very disappointing. He could not give birth to a second child, and that man kept egging on my 7th-generation granddaughter, doing everything he could to make I Ching the successor of the Lunyan family. At the same time, he forced my 6th-generation grandson to acknowledge I Ching. In the end, under the pressure of the bloodline, my 6th-generation grandson had no choice but to relent. However, he did not agree completely. Instead, he made 10 promises to I Ching. If I Ching could fulfill these 10 promises within 10 years, he would make I Ching the 7th-generation successor of the Lunyan clan and inherit the bloodline of the Lunyan clan. However, none of the 10 promises were easy to fulfill. Among them, I Ching had to become a famed sword holder within 10 years, kill more than 10,000 yuan ko within 10 years, amass 1 million merit points within 10 years, and kill 10 nether level or above yuan ko within 10 years. These promises were basically impossible for anyone below the famed sword holder level. But my silly big sister, I Ching, actually did it. She originally wanted to find the easiest one out of the 10, which was to find a group of human survivors who did not have the protection of a base city and bring them back to Yanjing City to be protected. Sister I Ching originally wanted to go to the desert near her hometown to look for people, but she didn't think that because it was her first time out, she would actually get lost. She ran all the way to Wudong Mountain and accidentally found the group of survivors on Wudong Mountain. Just as Sister I Ching was preparing to bring the group of survivors back, she met that dark whatever demon dragon that came to kill people. Sister I Ching could have escaped first, but after seeing so many innocent people, she gritted her teeth and prepared to face the demon dragon head-on. Unfortunately, in less than 3 seconds, she was burnt to a crisp by the demon dragon, and her body became as light as water. If I hadn't happened to pass by and saved her, I'm afraid that there would not be a Zhetian Jindi in this world. However, now that I think about it, these so-called coincidences are all fated. Otherwise, if there was no Zhetian Jindi in this world, then there would not be a Lord Father, and there would not be a Lord Father. Am I right, Lord Father? Gu Xuanwu looked at Gahan and smiled. Chapter 1593. If you didn't save I Ching, you wouldn't have a mother. Gahan couldn't help but complain in his heart after hearing Gu Xuanwu's words. But in the end, he suppressed his strange expression and asked calmly, "Then what happened? What happened to I Ching?" "Of course I saved her. I killed that demonic dragon in a second. After that, I Ching said that she must escort these people back to Yanjing City, but I was restricted from going near Yanjing City. I could only accompany her for a while. At that time, she didn't let down her guard against me and didn't tell me anything. She still pretended to be a man. I saw through her gender at first glance, but I didn't say anything. After watching them enter Yanjing City, I continued to travel. But along the way, she took the initiative to ask me to be her master, hoping to learn my swordsmanship. Thinking that the great Zhetian Jindi's swordsmanship was so bad, I could only teach her some swordsmanship in order to prevent any accident from happening in Yuzhong City. But father, don't worry. I never taught her our family's 9 swords of mysterious heaven and chaos sword art. She won't know our family's swordsmanship. This I Ching is really a genius in swordsmanship. Her comprehension of swordsmanship is too high. She has already reached a high level after learning from me for less than a month. To put it bluntly, her skill level is even higher than when I first met you, Father. After we parted ways, I heard that a person called I Ching made a name for herself in the human world and gradually became a spirit sword bearer. She did all the 10 things that she promised the Lunyan family. If I didn't know that Jitian Jiandi and Yinjing City fell out, I would have thought that she could become the next generation of the Lunyan family. Then it happened. That I Ching was suddenly declared to be a human traitor by Yinjing City. They issued a warrant of the highest level, asking everyone to kill her. When Gu Xuanwu said this, Gohan couldn't help but recall the time when he was wanted by the Sword Commission headquarters. It was still vivid in his mind, but now that he thought about it, there was no record of I Ching being wanted by Yinjing City. What was going on? Although Gohan's heart was filled with questions, he did not open his mouth to ask. Instead, he quietly listened to Gu Xuanwu's explanation. Later, after I finished my travels, I prepared to return to Kunlun Mountain to continue living in seclusion. Finally, I planned to go to Yuzhong City. At that time, Yuzhong City had yet to be built and was just a barren desert. I didn't expect to meet I Ching again. However, at that time, I Ching was being chased by more than 10 Yuan Ko's and was on the verge of death. I had no choice but to save her again. Probably because I saved her life the second time, she completely opened up to me and told me everything, including her origins and what happened after we parted on Wudong Mountain. She really did the 10 things that the Lionian clan had promised her. The Lionian clan seemed to want to fulfill their promise and let her become the successor of the Lionian clan. However, she had to fast and bathe for a month and stay in the Lionian clan. And in that 1 month, something happened that made me, your ancestor, feel extremely humiliated. For some reason, my 7th-generation granddaughter suddenly had a change of heart. She secretly had sex with more than 30 men and made I Ching's father cuckold. I Ching's father was also someone who could endure. He clearly knew that he had been cuckolded, but in order to ensure that I Ching's status as the successor would not change, he endured it silently. He waited until I Ching could take over the Lionian clan, waiting until he could truly hold his head up high. However, something unexpected happened. I don't know what happened to my 7th-generation granddaughter, but she actually overcame the doctor's diagnosis that she would never be able to get pregnant. She actually got pregnant while having sex with those men and gave birth to her own flesh and blood. After learning of this, the attitude of our descendants naturally changed drastically. Of course, they would not allow I Ching, who was not related by blood, to become the successor of the clan. I Ching herself didn't care about it, but her father went crazy. After learning of this, he secretly took out his sword at night and wanted to kill his own wife so that the Lionian clan would have no bloodline. By this time, he had already gone completely mad. Although he knew that he and I Ching would both die, the ambition that he had plotted for more than a decade was destroyed in a single night. This setback made him lose all reason. Then, he really killed my unlucky 7th-generation granddaughter. He pierced her heart with a sword, and there was no way for her to survive. After that, her father knew that he wouldn't be able to survive, so he simply committed suicide. In one night, 2 corpses and 3 lives were lost just like that. When the incident happened, our descendants were naturally furious. They could only watch helplessly as the last of the family's bloodline was cut off, and the murderer had already committed suicide. They had no way to vent their anger, so they could only place all the blame on I Ching. It's really embarrassing to say this. I didn't expect my children to be so stupid and dirty, but they really did it. They tied up the ignorant I Ching and pushed him onto a pile of firewood. They were going to burn him with fire. However, before she died, the clan gave I Ching a routine physical examination. In the end, they found out that I Ching had taken medicine in her body. So I Ching simply told them everything that happened when she was young. Only then did my descendants know that I Ching was actually a girl. What's even more amazing is that after testing I Ching's DNA, They were shocked to find that I Ching's bloodline was related to the Liunyuan clan. I Ching was actually a distant relative of my descendants. She had about a 30% similarity with my descendants. Father, I really didn't expect this. Our clan is actually related to Zhetian Jiendi. Zhetian Jiendi is also a distant relative of ours. I don't know if my descendants are related to I Ching's ancestors, or if my ancestors are related to I Ching. Oh, but my ancestors are father and mother. Mother was in England at that time, so it shouldn't be related to I Ching's ancestors. Perhaps I Ching's bloodline was left behind by father's ancestors. Gu Xuanwu laughed. Guhan also had a smile on his face. If Gu Xuanwu knew the truth of the matter, it would be the biggest joke in the world. Chapter 1594. Seeing that I Ching was related by blood, my infuriated sixth-generation grandson suddenly had an idea. He decided not to burn I Ching to death, but to raise her as a breeding tool so that she could give birth to the seventh generation of the Liunyuan clan. I don't know what's going on, but our descendants have always been of the same bloodline. We've never had 2 children in a generation, so we can't let any of our children die. Once they die, the entire clan's legacy will be severed. I Ching first pretended to be obedient and even got the family to find an antidote for her, turning her back into a woman. Just as the family stuffed a bunch of men into her room, I Ching suddenly went berserk and killed all of them. Then, she found an opportunity to escape from the Liunyuan family. She was chased by the Liunyuan family until she met me. This is the entire process of my interaction with the heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor. After saving her, I expressed my guilt for what had happened to her and helped her become an immortal sword wielder. Then, I realized that my descendants would lose their legacy. With no other choice, I could only break my oath and return to the Liunyuan family. I revealed my identity and scolded that useless sixth-generation grandson of mine, forcing him to take back all orders to kill I Ching. At the same time, I sealed the fact that I Ching was a woman and treated it as if it had never happened. How did you get my seventh-generation grandson to believe that you were his ancestor? As Gu Xuanwu spoke till here, Gu Han suddenly raised his head and asked curiously, under normal circumstances, for an ancestor that has been dead for over 100 years, wouldn't it be a little strange for it to suddenly appear? That's simple. If they don't believe me, I'll just beat them up until they do. Gu Xuanwu said calmly, but his tone was domineering. I used the 9 swords of heavenly profound, the chaotic sword art, and the 100 million sword art that my enemy created to beat up everyone in the Liunyuan family. None of them dared to say anything against me. At that time, there happened to be a few Yuanko who had connections with our Liunyuan family since the Great Calamity. They even stayed in the Liunyuan family for a long time and became guest elders of the Liunyuan family. After seeing me fight, these guest elders naturally confirmed my identity and didn't dare to act rashly again. Hearing Gu Xuanwu say this, Guhan could imagine the scene of Gu Xuanwu slaughtering everyone in the Liunyuan mountain and teaching his descendants a lesson. This was also what Guhan had wanted to do in the past. However, with the appearance of Liunyuan Ling and Liunyuan, the Liunyuan family was like half a home to Guhan. Of course, Guhan could not do such a thing. Afterwards, I performed some simple treatment on my useless sixth-generation grandson, allowing him to temporarily recover his fertility. After a week of hard work, I finally succeeded in getting the woman pregnant. After ensuring that the legacy of my Liunyuan clan would not end, I left the Liunyuan clan and returned to the Kunlun Mountains to continue living in seclusion. This seclusion lasted for 400 years. 400 years passed quickly as Gu Xuanwu spoke casually. However, there was something in Gu Xuanwu's words that piqued Guhan's curiosity. How did you restore the fertility of our descendants? After all, even technology can't do this. It's just that the technology back then couldn't do it. Gu Xuanwu smiled bitterly. At that time, it had only been over 100 years since the Great Calamity, and the human race had yet to recover their technological standards from before the Great Calamity. Therefore, even the most basic artificial insemination and cultivating embryos in vitro were not possible. As for my good-for-nothing grandson, He was injured when he was young and broke that thing. There's no way for him to recover. So, I could only use consciousness fragments to manually create some tadpoles from pure milk and send them deep into the bodies of different women. This saved the tadpoles from having to travel long distances under normal circumstances and allowed them to reach their destination in one go. However, because the tadpoles were congenitally deficient, the children they gave birth to were also congenitally deficient. Later on, I heard that the child was not even 30 years old. He died when he was only a famed swordsman. He was only able to carry on the family line. When Gu Xuanwu finished his words, Gu Han also recalled it. When the heaven-shrouding sword emperor was at his peak, the Lunyan family was indeed very quiet. The descendants of that generation rarely appeared in public, and they died at a young age. They became the weakest descendant in the history of the Lunyan family. It was because of their relationship. However, Gahan felt that it was a pity that Gu Xuanwu's story about I Ching ended there. Gu Xuanwu never met I Ching again, so Gahan did not know what happened to I Ching after that. And what about the descendants of the Yi family? Were they really I Ching's descendants? Although Gohan had all sorts of guesses about I Ching's story, Gu Xuanwu's story was not finished. Soon, it reached the most crucial moment, which was Artoria's time. I've been living in seclusion on Mount Kunlun for nearly 600 years. I thought I would continue living in seclusion on Mount Kunlun until my father was born and I reunited with him. At this point, Gu Xuanwu's tone suddenly became a little sorrowful, but the Alps mountain battle that caused the humans to suffer heavy casualties happened. I didn't want to interfere in this matter and let the humans fight on. But when I saw the humans fighting with no fear of death, when I saw those sword-bearers scrambling to sacrifice themselves, and when I saw my descendants about to die tragically in the hands of Varokana, I finally couldn't hold back and made a move. I used all my strength and shot out a sword aura of chaos unification from the sky, repelling Varokana and barely protecting the foundation of humanity. What? The sword aura that saved the entire human race was shot by you. Gohan was shocked by his daughter's words. In human history, there were many different opinions about the sword aura that saved the entire human race during the most difficult battle in the Alps. The consensus was that the owner of the sword aura had surpassed the level of an emperor swordsman and reached an unprecedented level. However, no one knew who the owner of the sword aura was, not even Gahan. Who would have thought that the mystery would be revealed? This sword chi had actually been unleashed by his own daughter, Gu Xuanwu. This shocked Gu Han, but at the same time, he could not help but feel a little confused. Could it be that his daughter's ability had already surpassed an emperor sword wielder? In that case, she had reached the same level as him. If he fought with her, sect leader Tantian would be dead for sure. Thinking of this, Gohan's blood began to boil. This was an unexpected surprise. It seemed like the prime of Tantian would definitely die this time. Chapter 1595. Actually, I don't know what level I'm at now. It's just that when I was living in seclusion at the top of Kunlun Mountain, I suddenly saw the sun rise one day. I was filled with emotions and suddenly broke through to this level that I'm at now, which I find a little strange. I don't know if I've already surpassed the Emperor's Sword level. Gu Xuanwu said with a bitter smile. You don't know. Gu Han stared blankly for a moment before tapping his finger lightly on the wooden table in front of him. A dark green seedling instantly sprouted from the surface of the table and rapidly grew. Its sprouted branches bore flowers and bloomed flowers. In the end, it turned into a pure white carnation. It glistened brightly on the table while emitting a faint fragrance. Gu Xuanwu nodded his head, and just like Gu Han, he tapped lightly on the table, and another flower bloomed, and what Gu Xuanwu released was actually an extremely bright red rose. To be able to forcefully grow a flower on the table without a seed was something that could be done by Yuenko, who was a mage. However, for an Emperor Sword level sword wielder who fought with a sword, this was definitely beyond the capabilities of an Emperor Sword level sword wielder. Looks like you've already reached the level of a sage. Guhan said with a serious expression. Is this the legendary level of a sage? It's the same level as the prime of Tong Tian. Gu Xuanwu glanced at the red rose. Within a second, the entire table immediately bloomed with countless roses, filling up the entire table. The original appearance of the table could no longer be seen. That's right. To create all things are in the heart. This is the level of a sage. Gohan nodded and smiled happily. Then, his expression turned ugly. As a father, I've gone through a lot of hardships to barely reach this level. I didn't expect my daughter to have already reached this level. Compared to you, I'm far inferior. Father, how can you say that? I've stayed on Kunlun Mountain for 400 years before I finally reached this step. But father, you're not even 70 years old yet. I'm far inferior to you. Gu Xuanwu sighed sincerely. All right, there's no need for us father and daughter to flatter each other. Why don't you tell me what happened next? Artoria, how did you and your mother come to this place? Gohan asked curiously. That was the story that happened after the battle in the Alps Mountains. After that battle, humans hated the Martyr's Palace in Yuan Ko, who started the battle in the Alps Mountains. Coincidentally, humans welcomed a period of geniuses. There were a total of 4 Emperor Sword wielders in the world at the same time. It was also at that time that I went out to travel again. In the end, I met Ardwolf, who was struggling for his life. After learning about Mother from him, I immediately rushed to Xianying Airport and rescued Mother. I removed the filth from her and sent her to Yanjing City. So, you're the real protagonist in the history of Artoria. Gohan glanced at his daughter. Once upon a time, Gohan thought that he would return to the past and save Artoria according to the storyline of the dungeon. Now, it seemed like it was all thanks to his daughter. A father and a daughter are the same. A daughter saving mother is equivalent to a father saving mother. Isn't that right? Gu Xuanwu laughed and continued. The story that happened next was similar to what was recorded in history. In the end, Artoria led the 4 human Emperor Sword wielders to the headquarters of the Martyr's Palace in the dimensional space. In the end, the Martyr's Palace used a suicidal tactic to cut off the connection between the headquarters and the main world. Those Emperor Sword wielders were afraid that they would be trapped in the dimensional space and unable to return, so they abandoned Mother and fled back to the main world. Mother was forced to enter the seamless corridor to escape. At that time, I was worried about Mother, so I hid at the side and watched quietly. When I realized that Mother had entered the seamless corridor, I realized that something was wrong. But it was already too late. I was forced into the seamless corridor and could only follow behind Mother. After I entered the seamless corridor, I immediately began to look for my mother. In the end, when I found Mother, she was no longer the mother from before. She said that she had a daughter, and the second time she entered was to find her daughter's father. It was only then that I realized that the person I found might not be the mother who had entered before, but the mother who had mysteriously disappeared after giving birth to me. Even now, I still don't know what happened between these 2 mothers. Gu Xuanwu lowered his head and said sorrowfully. At the side, Gohan was sweating profusely. Gu Xuanwu did not know the difference between the 2 Artorias and what happened between them. But Gohan himself knew very well that the Artoria that Gu Xuanwu had found was clearly the Artoria that he had sent out of the seamless corridor. In order to search for the truth that had long since been forgotten, she had once more entered the seamless corridor. However, Artoria hadn't been able to recover her memories. Instead, she had encountered her daughter, who had gone through many trials and tribulations many years later. As for the Artoria who first entered the seamless corridor, of course, she met Gohan at the first moment, and then a series of twists and turns occurred. Child, Gohan moved his lips, as if he wanted to tell Gu Xuanwu the truth. But when the words were about to come out of his mouth, Gohan swallowed them back down. Right now was the moment when father and daughter had just reunited. There was no need to talk about such a depressing topic. He would find an opportunity in the future to tell her. At the same time, Gu Xuanwu's story continued. After finding Mother, I discovered that not only had she lost a large amount of her memories, but she had also become somewhat dull. Clearly, entering the seamless corridor twice in a row had deeply damaged Mother's soul, causing her to fluctuate between normal and demented. I knew that Mother couldn't continue to stay in the seamless corridor, but I didn't dare to directly destroy the seamless corridor. After all, there was still another Mother in the seamless corridor. If I destroyed this place, wouldn't the other Mother be forever lost in the dimensional world? So I could only temporarily change the rules of the seamless corridor and walk to the end of the endless corridor. At the same time, I discovered this door, as well as the time behind the door, and this beautiful flower fruit mountain. Although I don't know why this flower fruit mountain would appear here, or why it would appear at the end of the endless corridor, it is indeed a wonderful place that one would forget to leave. Chapter 1596. Afterwards, your daughter pondered that Lord Father should be born in a few hundred years. At this time, I should also be born in the origin world. There can't be two of me in the same world. Otherwise, the supreme law that controls the operation of the entire world will become chaotic. In addition, Mother also likes the environment of Mount Huagua. Therefore, your daughter decided not to return to the origin world. Instead, I quietly stayed in Mount Huagua and waited for time to pass by. At this point, Gu Xuanwu's story was finally finished. Her life's trajectory for the past 1,000 years was completely presented in front of Guhan. Why didn't you come back to find me? Guhan gently looked at his daughter. At the same time, he asked with a slight rebuke, if you knew when you would return to the past, why didn't you immediately return to my side? Do you know how much pain Father felt because of your departure all these years? I'm sorry. Your daughter has long wanted to return to find Father. However, your daughter was afraid that your daughter's appearance would disturb your life. Although your daughter doesn't know what will happen in the future, your daughter faintly knows that Father will only be able to obtain greater power after you are completely separated from me. Moreover, your daughter believes that Father will find your daughter sooner or later. Your daughter only needs to quietly wait here for Father. Just like today, your daughter has finally found Father. When her voice fell, Gu Xuanwu could no longer suppress the surging emotions in her heart. She threw herself into Gahan's embrace and began to wantonly cry. Child, Father has let you down. Father should have found you long ago. Guhan also hugged his daughter tightly, and the two of them instantly burst into tears. Tears flowed freely, and their cries alternated with each other. It was unknown how much time had passed before the voices gradually calmed down. Lord Father, you see, your daughter is really too insensible. She actually made Father cry for so long. Gu Xuanwu also became aware of this gaffe. She shyly jumped up from Gahan's embrace. Then, she frantically rummaged through a cabinet in the room. After a while, she came back with a large brocade box. At the same time, she waved her hand, and the blooming roses on the table disappeared. Then, Gu Xuanwu solemnly placed the brocade box on the table. What is this? Gahan looked at the brocade box and asked curiously. This is a letter that your daughter wrote to Lord Father. Gu Xianwu's face was slightly red as he said, in the past 1,000 years, every time I miss my father, I can't help but pick up my brush and write a letter to my father. It's just that these letters have never been sent out and have always been left with me, gradually accumulating to this extent. Guhan glanced at the brocade box from the corner of his eyes. He discovered that this brocade box was actually a dimensional equipment. There was a dimensional space inside. At the same time, there were at least 100,000 letters stored in this brocade box. It was obvious that his daughter was constantly thinking of this incompetent father of hers. Every 2 to 3 days, she would write a letter to him. Seeing this scene, Gahan was probably crying again. Can I take a look at these letters? Gahan trembled as he looked at the brocade box. Yes. Gu Xuanwu nodded and said, Sex was originally written for Lord Father. Of course, Lord Father can take a look. Then, Gu Xuanwu personally took out a dozen or so letters from the brocade box and solemnly placed them in front of Gahan. Gahan carefully picked up these letters that had been stored for who knows how long and had been baptized by time. He very carefully tore open the sealed envelope and took out the yellowed letter inside. Then he concentrated on reading it. When Guhan read the letters, he practically swallowed every word in the letter into his stomach. Every time he finished reading a letter, he couldn't help but tear up. These letters were filled with his daughter's deep longing for him. Guhan felt that he wasn't reading a letter, but a burning torch. A torch that could forcefully roast him. Every time he read a letter, Guhan's regret towards Gu Xuanwu deepened. He was filled with endless regret. If he had been able to save his daughter back then, and let her share the world with him, how wonderful would that have been? Although Guhan read each letter very slowly, as time passed, he still finished reading them one by one. There was only one letter left in his hand. Guhan opened the letter. His expression changed from being touched to a strange expression. "What is this?" Guhan asked Gu Xuanwu as he held the letter. "I didn't expect to casually pick it up and actually take it out." Seeing this letter, Gu Xuanwu was also shocked. Then he lowered his head and said, "This is something that I randomly wrote when I missed my father the most 700 years ago. I felt that if there was such a contract, and if father was able to sign it, perhaps father would not leave my side." Sigh. Hearing Gu Xuanwu's words, Guhan let out a deep sigh. Then he powerlessly placed the letter on the table. At the top of the letter, the words "contract of being together forever" appeared. That's right, it was a contract, and a very simple one at that. The entire contract only had one sentence. "Daddy Guhan, Mommy Artoria, Daughter Gu Xuanwu, I hope that we can be together forever. We don't ask to be born in the same year and month, but we hope to die in the same year and month." At the same time, there were already 2 red signatures at the end of the contract. One was Gu Xuanwu's signature, and the other was Artoria's signature. There was also a space that was obviously left for Guhan's signature. "Father, doesn't my daughter's contract look very stupid?" Gu Xuanwu noticed that Guhan's expression was strange, and immediately said in a depressed tone, "No, there's no contract more touching than this in the world." Guhan shook his head forcefully and held the contract tightly. His body was trembling from head to toe. Finally, he spread the contract open and extended his right hand to Gu Xuanwu. "For me? What? Give me the pen." "Oh." Gu Xuanwu immediately placed the pen in his hand into Guhan's hand, and then Guhan signed his name on the contract. "No, you can't sign it. You can't sign this." At this moment, the door to the room was suddenly pushed open, and Artoria, who was naked and messy, suddenly appeared in front of them. What was worth noting was that Artoria's naked body was full of scars. Some of these scars were marks of being whipped, while others were marks of being tied up with iron chains. "What's going on?" Guhan asked with a blank expression. At this moment, Guhan's Han character had just finished the last stroke on the contract. Chapter 1597. She's not our daughter. She's not our daughter. She's the prime of Tong Tian. She's the prime of Tong Tian. This was the second sentence that Artoria uttered as she struggled to escape. Gu Xuanwu's expression changed instantly after hearing this sentence. All his previous agitation disappeared and was replaced by indifference. Whether it was the face he looked at Artoria or the face he looked at Guhan, his expression was indifferent. "You actually broke free from my restriction. How did you do it?" Gu Xuanwu asked indifferently. Artoria didn't answer his question because she had exhausted all her strength in order to break free from Gu Xuanwu's control. Her body fell heavily to the ground. However, Guhan reacted in time and quickly reached out his hand. Artoria was pulled into his arms by Guhan. A thick blanket appeared out of thin air and quickly wrapped Artoria's wounded body. "Are you the father of my child, the man named Guhan?" Artoria opened her eyes weakly and looked at Guhan blankly. "Yes, it's me. I'm Guhan. I'm the father of our child." Guhan's eyes couldn't help but moisten a little as he nodded vigorously. "Why is it different from what I imagined?" Artoria gasped weakly. "How could I, Artoria, fall in love with a man like you and even have a child with you? This is really a joke of fate." After saying this, Artoria lost consciousness and fainted in Guhan's arms. Although Guhan wanted to save Artoria immediately, he obviously didn't have the conditions to do so at this time. He could only put Artoria into the dimensional space. Now, what Gahan really needed to face was his biological daughter who stood opposite him. Gu Xuanwu. What's going on? What did you do to your mother? After settling Artoria down, Gohan angrily asked the Gu Xuanwu. As you can see, this woman is not obedient, but this deity cannot kill her for the time being. I can only use some methods to trap her, to prevent her from escaping. But I did not expect that she actually escaped. This is really strange, Gu Xuanwu said indifferently. Then why did you hurt your mother like this? Gohan continued to question. Originally, I did not intend to harm her, but you caused the death of my disciple and destroyed my Qingping. This lord's anger can only be vented on your wife's body. What? Do you have an opinion? Gu Xuanwu said indifferently. You really are Tong Tian. Gu Xuanwu's words made Gohan suck in a breath of cold air. Her words just now was undoubtedly admitting her identity. Just like what Artoria had said, Gu Xuanwu was the prime of Tong Tian. No, if you're sect leader Tong Tian, where did you take my daughter? Where's my daughter? Where's my child, Gu Xuanwu? Gohan asked with an incomparably crazy look. Hee, where's your daughter? Do you need me to tell you? Gu Xuanwu, no. Tong Tian smiled coldly. I did not expect you to step into the path of a sage in just 30 years. This is really beyond my expectations. How did you see the path with your own eyes? The heavenly Tao has already been lost, so it should be impossible for you to see the path. But forget it, it's not important. Since you have become a sage, you should know that nothing in the world can deceive a sage, let alone the flesh and blood of a sage. In front of us, what is true, and what is false. If it was not for the fact that I was injured 30 years ago, I would not have been deceived by your simple and crude head-splitting technique. Right now, both of us are at our peak state. You know better than anyone that the person standing in front of you is your daughter, otherwise you would not hug me and cry, right? This is a genuine sage's tear. It's not easy to see a sage cry. Sect leader Tong Tian sighed with emotion. His words sounded a little vague, but in fact, he was referring to one thing. That was, the person standing in front of him was the real Gu Xuanwu, because a sage could see through the essence of all things. No fake things could deceive the eyes of a sage. Otherwise, with Gohan's degree of cunning, it was impossible for him to be deceived by the fake Gu Xuanwu. Therefore, there was only one truth, and that was that the prime of Tong Tian in front of him was also Gohan's biological daughter, Gu Xuanwu. The two of them existed as one. The prime of Tong Tian is my daughter? My daughter is the prime of Tong Tian? Gohan weakly took a dozen steps back. He could not believe the fact that made him shiver all over. Yes, although I don't want to admit it, it seems that I am indeed your biological daughter. It is really sad and lamentable. I actually want to kill my own biological father. Alas, everything in this world, including the pair of hands and the pen behind my back, can only be played by him. But forget it. Let's forget about what happened before. The victory already belongs to me. Gohan, although you have set foot on the sage position with untold hardships, your path ends here. Let this beautiful Mount Huagua be your final burial place. Tong Tian smiled slightly. You're a little too confident. Gohan suppressed the anger and pain in his heart, looked at Tong Tian coldly, and said, You and I are both sages now, and we have both set foot on that final realm. What makes you think that you can defeat me? I, Gohan, am unparalleled in this world in swordsmanship. You are not my match. Be quiet. Don't be so noisy. Tong Tian shrugged his shoulders. Yes, your swordsmanship is indeed unparalleled in this world. Even I was defeated by your swordsmanship, and even my 5 primordial treasures fell into your hands. But so what? I don't need a sword now. I only need this pen to kill you. After hearing Tong Tian's words, Gohan seemed to instantly understand something. Without saying anything, he immediately chopped at the table with his sword chi, trying to destroy the table and everything on it. It's useless. Even if you can transcend the limits of this world, don't even think about destroying this pen. Tong Tian did not stop Gohan and let him destroy the whole table. However, no matter how sharp and powerful Gohan's sword chi was, even if the whole table was destroyed to the size of a cork, The piece of paper and the pen were still quietly floating in the air. Tong Tian gently pointed his finger, and the pen and the piece of paper flew into his hand. This is a contract. According to you humans, as long as a contract is written and signed, it can never be changed, Tong Tian said with a smile. Chapter 1598. The image of the ordinary brush changed instantly in sect leader Tong Tian's hand. At the same time, Gahan's pupils shrank into a small dot. At this moment, that ordinary-looking pen became the all-world's brush that killed Hong Jun ancestor. Meanwhile, Guhan saw it with his own eyes in Qing Ping's memory, the all-world brush that helped Pan Gu to wake up and create the world. Just now, the pen he signed on the contract was actually the all-world's brush. Guhan, you're my last companion in this world. I don't want to lie to you now. Do you know what this world brush is capable of, and how I killed Hong Jun ancestor? Sect leader Tong Tian asked Gahan suddenly. I guessed it, but I'm not sure. Gahan smiled bitterly. Oh, tell me about it. This 10,000 worlds brush's strokes are extremely heavy. A single stroke unchangeable? Guhan said, You are really smart. You even guessed it. Sect leader Tong Tian exclaimed, Yes, this world brush is so powerful that everything can be fixed with one stroke. Anything written by this brush, even if it is going to destroy the world, kill immortals and kill gods, it will be fixed. Even an existence like Teacher Hong Jun can be easily killed with a single stroke. After my master imprisoned me, he argued with me from time to time. He said that I was too extreme, but I complained that he was unfair and partial to my two senior brothers. My teacher, on the other hand, was very stubborn. He refused to admit that he was unfair no matter what. So I took out this brush and wrote on the paper, If Hong Jun is dishonest, the way of heaven will cease to exist. Then I asked my master if he dared to sign his name on this paper. Although my master knew everything in the world, he didn't know the existence of the world brush. He signed his name on the paper. Guess what happened after that? Sect leader Tong Tian asked. Then the heavenly Tao will no longer exist, and Hong Jun will also be finished, right? Guhan smiled bitterly. That's right. With just this name, the heavenly Tao is finished, and Hong Jun is finished along with it. All of a sudden, sect leader Tong Tian began to laugh wildly. You can't imagine Master's expression at that time. He watched the way of heaven being destroyed, and then he, who had merged with the way of heaven, perished together with it. Although his strength was 10 times stronger than mine, he had no ability to resist at all. He could only watch himself die. Now that I think of that desperate expression, I still feel it's so wonderful. Ha ha! Master's hundreds of millions of years of bitter cultivation, tens of thousands of years of planning, and dreams of transcending the great Tao have all turned into nothingness with a single stroke of his brush. There's nothing more wonderful than this in the world. Ha ha ha! Sect leader Tong Tian laughed even more arrogantly and cheerfully, and the way to use the myriad world's brush was clear at a glance. As long as one wrote a sentence with this brush and signed their name, the sentence would immediately come true for them. This was the effect of the world brush. One stroke of the brush was extremely powerful, and one stroke of the brush could cause all things to be set in stone. This was the meaning of this brush. At the same time, Guhan naturally thought of the word he had just signed with the myriad world's brush. Father Guhan, Mother Artoria, daughter Gu Xuanwu, we could be together forever. We don't ask to be born in the same year and month, but we hope to die in the same year and month. I was wondering why you were so willing to play the role of my daughter, and you did it so vividly. It turns out that you just wanted to trick me into signing that name. Guhan sighed and said, Yes, it's really not easy to make you sign your name willingly. You're so crafty that even I fell into your trap when I was careless. If I wasn't your daughter, I'm afraid I wouldn't have tricked you into signing it. Sect leader Tong Tian nodded and said, The key point of this contract is not to be born in the same year and month, but to die in the same year and month. Guhan carefully thought over the words written on the contract, and at the same time, his expression became even more bitter. So if any one of me, my wife, or my daughter dies, then the other two will definitely die at the same time, right? Yes, you're right. It's true that I can't kill you with your current ability, but I've planted an irremovable magic power in Artoria's body. In another hour, Artoria will definitely die. At that time, you, your daughter, and your wife will all die together. There won't be any mistakes. This is the power of the Eternal World Brush. Tontian said in an incomparably arrogant manner. Why do you have to make it so troublesome? Gohan sighed and said, if the brush is so powerful, why don't you write on the paper sect leader Tontian is invincible in the world and can kill any opponent in seconds and then sign your name? Then you can kill me, right? Why do you have to play the role of my daughter to deceive me? If it's possible, it's naturally excellent. But it's a pity that I can only see it, but not use it. Sect leader Tontian's face suddenly showed deep jealousy. Not everyone can use this myriad world's brush. Only the protagonist of this world, that is, the person with the identity of Hongjun, can use this brush. Since ancient times, there have only been 3 people who have been able to truly utilize this brush. Let me guess. The 3 people are me, Ancestor Hongjun, and Kenzu, right? Gohan said, yes, it's the 3 of you. Fleeting Year Calendar has already signed his name on the contract. It's a pity that I didn't completely integrate with this body at that time, so I couldn't set up a death trap. I could only let him be exiled from the main world forever and be lost in the dimensional world forever. Otherwise, the new Hongjun wouldn't be born, Sect Leader Tontian said angrily. At the same time, Tontian's words made Gohan feel bitter. At that time, Tontian had not completely merged with the Black Tortoise's body, so he could not kill Fleeting Year. It seemed that Sect Leader Tontian could trick him into signing a death contract. Didn't it mean that he had completely integrated with his daughter's body? What did you do to my daughter? Anyway, I'm going to die in an hour. Can't you just let me die knowing what happened? Gohan sighed and said very sadly, haha, if you hadn't harmed my poor disciple 30 years ago, if you hadn't harmed my Qingping, perhaps I would have let you die in the clear. But since you've killed my disciple and harmed my Qingping, then you can die without knowing why. I'll make sure that even if you die, you won't be able to die peacefully. Tontian's sect leader said angrily. Gohan felt that he had been wronged. Qingping's death was indeed caused by Gohan. However, Goddess Wudong didn't care about Gohan's death. Sect leader Tontian killed Qingping in order to escape. Forget it. It was useless to reason with sect leader Tontian now. Sect leader Tontian was extremely stubborn, so it was useless to talk nonsense. Therefore, Gohan could only sit quietly and pour himself a cup of tea. Then he said faintly, since you don't want to say it, let me guess. Chapter 1599. Actually, from the moment my daughter was born, you had already possessed my daughter's body, right? Gohan calmed down as he looked at the rather irascible Grandmaster Tongti. The Grandmaster Tontian didn't react to Gohan's words at all, but his pupils involuntarily contracted. Clearly, Gohan had guessed correctly. Black Tortoise was born in the Seamless Corridor, and the Seamless Corridor is a place used for sealing. I still remember that when she was born, a tortoise phenomenon appeared, which is why she was named Black Tortoise. At the time, I just thought that it was a simple natural phenomenon, but now it seems that it was a sign that you had possessed my daughter's body, right? The Grandmaster Tontian still didn't say anything, but tacit agreement was an admission. Clearly, Gohan had guessed correctly yet again. The Seamless Corridor is a place used to seal you. 5 saints simultaneously place this seal on you, and even the remnant divine sense of Old Lord Taishang serves as a jailer to watch over you. Unless the Seamless Corridor is destroyed, there is no way for your true body to leave it. Actually, this rule isn't just for you. It is for everyone who enters the Seamless Corridor. Mortals, or saints, as long as they enter the Seamless Corridor from the outside world, there is no way for them to leave. Even the jailer, Old Lord Taishang himself, is unable to escape from the Seamless Corridor. This seems to be an unbreakable paradox. And if you want to escape from the Seamless Corridor, The only way is to borrow a body to be reborn. Only a newborn, pure, and flawless life that has no trace of its existence in this world could be used as a tool for you to borrow a body to be reborn. And this unlucky person is my own daughter, right? At the time, I didn't quite understand why old Lord Taishang would say that the seamless corridor had already lost its original purpose. I thought that something had happened to the seamless corridor itself, but now it seems that the prisoner responsible for watching over the seamless corridor has already escaped. Naturally, there's no longer any reason for the seamless corridor to continue existing. As for the jailers watching over the seamless corridor, they naturally don't need to continue working day after day, forever without end. Also, I actually saw an old friend on the way here. If I remember correctly, I should have sent this old friend back to his dimensional world. But at the time, he was still alive and kicking in the seamless corridor. That's why I'm guessing that when I first arrived, it was at the same time that I personally ended all of the laws within the seamless corridor. From the looks of it, you should have escaped from the seamless corridor long ago. Otherwise, there's no way I could have ended the seamless corridor. Am I right? Gohan asked again. Not bad, you guessed it right. This time, sect leader Tong Tian no longer remained silent. He admitted all this straightforwardly. As a result, the final truth was laid out in front of everyone. The first time he entered the seamless corridor, Gohan was just an immortal-level sword wielder. He had no way of understanding the laws of the seamless corridor at all, and so he could only let old Lord Taishang do as he pleased. But the second time he entered the seamless corridor, Gohan had already become a saint. And as a saint, as soon as he entered the seamless corridor, he already knew the laws of the seamless corridor like the back of his hand. There were two core laws of the seamless corridor. The first was that no matter how powerful one was, as long as one entered the seamless corridor, they would never be able to leave or destroy the seamless corridor. The second core law was that as long as sect leader Tong Tian was still alive within the seamless corridor, then the first law would never be able to be broken. These two laws could be said to have logically sealed off all possibilities for sect leader Tong Tian to escape from the seamless corridor. Sect leader Tong Tian would never be able to escape the cage that was the seamless corridor. But then again, there was no such thing as an unbreakable paradox in this world. Every paradox had its own logical flaw, and this paradox was no exception. The biggest flaw in this paradox was that if Grandmaster Tong Tian died in the seamless corridor, then if there was a life form that had been born and nurtured in the seamless corridor from the beginning to the end, then once this life form killed Grandmaster Tong Tian, it would be able to leave the seamless corridor as it pleased. No one would be able to stop it from leaving the seamless corridor. Yes, that's right. I trust that all of you who have read up to this point should understand by now. The black tortoise was a life form that had been born and nurtured within the seamless corridor from the very beginning. It was a life form that was not bound by the laws of the seamless corridor, and this was the only chance for sect leader Tong Tian to escape from the seamless corridor. Thus, when the black tortoise was born, sect leader Tong Tian did two things. First, he sent his true soul into the body of the newly born black tortoise, merging it with the true soul that the black tortoise had been nurturing. This way, sect leader Tong Tian would no longer be sect leader Tong Tian. To put it more accurately, sect leader Tong Tian would become the black tortoise skyspan. To put it more accurately, sect leader Tong Tian would be reincarnated into I Ching's womb, becoming Gohan's daughter, the black tortoise, while sect leader Tong Tian would be nothing more than a memory of the black tortoise's past life. That's more or less what it meant. And the second thing sect leader Tong Tian did was to use the last of his strength to allow the newly formed black tortoise skyspan to kill off the remnants of his divine sense, causing sect leader Tong Tian to truly die in a logical sense. And thus, the core of the seamless corridor's existence was completely broken. Following the birth of the black tortoise, the seamless corridor had actually already lost its ability to trap others. At that time, there was no need for them to fight for the right to leave the seamless corridor. All they had to do was wait patiently, and the seamless corridor would collapse on its own, or perhaps the saints would hasten its collapse. And yes, that's right. The person who had hastened the collapse of the seamless corridor was Gahan, who had entered the seamless corridor for the second time. And through this acceleration, Gahan was able to confirm that sect leader Tontian, who was currently in the seamless corridor, had already died. As for the true identity of the Black Tortoise, Gahan now had a firm grasp on it. Although Gahan had already guessed the truth of the matter long ago, the ultimate boss who had been hiding in the shadows, the one who had plotted to destroy the entire human race, was none other than his own daughter, the Black Tortoise. From the moment his daughter was born, she had become the body that sect leader Tontian coveted, and the key to his revival. From a certain perspective, it was his appearance that gave sect leader Tontian the chance to escape the seamless corridor and be revived. If he hadn't entered the endless corridor to search for Artoria, then sect leader Tontian would never have been able to obtain a brand new body. It was Gahan who had harmed his own daughter. But then again, from the looks of it, sect leader Tontian was in essence Gahan's own daughter. This was just like reincarnation. No matter what identity she had in her previous life, in this era, sect leader Tontian was Gahan's own daughter. Chapter 1600. Although I have said this many times before, I still have to say it once more. You are simply too smart, so smart that I am afraid. The Skyren sect lord let out a long sigh. Indeed, it is as you said. I borrowed your daughter's body in order to escape the seamless corridor, but that also caused all of my power to disappear, returning me to the level of an ordinary mortal. Because I was afraid that my memories would cause the seamless corridor to think that I was still alive, I could only choose to seal my original memories, allowing this body to grow into a personality that belonged to her. More importantly, I didn't know at the time, this child was actually your woman, my former disciple, the daughter of my future greatest opponent. In terms of ethics and blood relations, I had to call you father. This is a fact that no matter how strong I am, I will never be able to change. Although this was the key to my escape, it was also my greatest failure. When my memories were reawakened, the original personality of this body was already very mature. This personality even had the power of a demi-saint. My memories were no longer able to take control of this body. I could only subtly influence the original personality to accept this memory, and then fuse them together, allowing Grandmaster Tontian to be reborn in this body perfectly. This is probably the reason why Kinzu was so determined to kill you, even if he had to abandon his deep relationship with you. He even wanted to completely erase all traces of your existence from this world. Gohan said softly, "You were subtly influencing Black Tortoise's personality. So Black Tortoise showed many abnormal signs of a split personality and even did many things behind the scenes that were not beneficial to humanity. As the man who shared a bed with my daughter, Kinzu naturally noticed her abnormality at the first moment. Even without Grandmaster Tontian saying anything, Gohan could almost see what the truth was. Under the influence of Grandmaster Tontian's memories, Black Tortoise would definitely show many strange symptoms similar to those of a schizophrenic patient, and these symptoms naturally could not escape the eyes of the man who shared a bed with her, namely Kinzu. After Kinzu noticed his wife's abnormality, he naturally tried every means possible to figure out the reason for this abnormality. Although he did not know what had happened during this period of time, the result was without a doubt that Kinzu had discovered everything in the end. He had discovered that his wife was the reincarnation of the culprit who had destroyed the entire world. His ancient sword-tier sword mistress was a trump card that the boss had placed beside him, ready to betray him at any time. He had discovered that as long as he killed the Gu Xuanwu, the entire human race would be able to welcome peace. Therefore, for the sake of mankind, Kinzu had decided to abandon his feelings and kill Gu Xianwu without any hesitation. This was also the reason why Ying Zheng had been hunting Gu Xianwu for over 10 years. What Kinzu had done was indeed for the sake of mankind, a choice he had no choice but to make from the standpoint of mankind. That's right, but it wasn't the man who found out the truth. It was this stupid personality who told the man the truth. Sect leader Tong Tian snorted coldly. Actually, I was too impatient at that time. After discovering that the man was Hong Jun, I couldn't wait to make him sign the same contract as you. However, I didn't expect the original personality's love for that man to be so deep. Even at the risk of her own personality being destroyed, she still wanted to perish together with my personality. Helpless, I could only change the contract and banish that man into a dimensional space forever. He's probably still floating in some dimensional space now. This was really too good for him. Listening to sect leader Tong Tian's words, Kinzu was really not dead, but he would never be able to return to the origin world. After this incident, I truly realized that if I couldn't completely fuse with the Gu Xianwu's personality, I wouldn't be able to take back my original power, much less progress. However, I tried for a total of 400 years, but I still couldn't find a way to completely fuse with the Gu Xianwu. Until 600 years ago, I was suddenly enlightened and found a real way to fuse with the Gu Xianwu. Dad, you're so smart. Can you guess what's the way to fuse with the Gu Xianwu? Sect leader Tong Tian was unwilling to give up, so he wanted to test Guhan's intelligence again. What's there to guess? Isn't it the black crystal that you gave to that stupid woman, Ming Yuan? Guhan smiled bitterly. Actually, you've been trapped in a misunderstanding. You always thought that the thing that prevented you from fusing with the Gu Xianwu was black tortoise. In fact, it's you who really prevented you from fusing with the Gu Xianwu. You've been holding on to your identity as sect leader Tong Tian, so you can't fuse with the Gu Xianwu. Only when you really forget your identity as sect leader Tong Tian and give up everything that belongs to sect leader Tong Tian can you fuse with the Gu Xianwu. Am I right? Dad, why are you so smart? Isn't it better to pretend to be stupid? It's very unfulfilling. Sect leader Tong Tian glanced at Guhan angrily. His tone suddenly became as intimate as that of Gu Xianwu, as if he was Guhan's real daughter. However, his words and attitude made Guhan feel even more disappointed. It seemed that sect leader Tong Tian had really fused with the Gu Xianwu completely. It was already so difficult to fuse them together. How difficult it would be to separate them. He was afraid that he would never get his poor daughter back. On the other side, sect leader Tong Tian continued to narrate. Just as you said, Dad, the key that I can't fuse with the Gu Xianwu is actually sect leader Tong Tian. I must completely abandon sect leader Tong Tian in order to achieve my true self. Therefore, I separated everything in my body that was related to sect leader Tong Tian and formed a black crystal. I handed it to the netherworld Iris Sword Empress so that she could absorb the fragments of sect leader Tong Tian's consciousness through the black crystal. In the end, sect leader Tong Tian was resurrected. Sigh, I can't believe I was so stupid in the past. I'm ashamed of myself, even though I'm secretly watching from the side. Guhan could not help but feel a chill run down his spine when he heard Gu Xuanwu's voice and tone in Tong Tian's image. How is that stupid woman now? Is she still alive? Guhan suddenly asked. Dead. Gu Xuanwu, or rather, Tong Tian's sect leader, said straightforwardly. On the day you forced him to retreat, I found him and killed him. Even now, I can't forget his expression of disbelief after I killed him. That was too interesting. I also know that at the moment when I killed her, I really felt my true soul, my true self. At that moment, sect leader Tong Tian no longer existed, and Gu Xianwu also no longer existed. There is only one name in this world, Gu Xianwu Tong Tian. Hearing the name of Gu Xianwu Tong Tian, Guhan felt powerless and collapsed to the ground. At this moment, Guhan knew that his daughter Gu Xianwu had completely disappeared. She would never come back. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.